All right, hey guys, what is up? We're live. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist and the only thing that matters is film. That's Jay, and I'm Cole, and we're back. And I guess just jumping right into things. We're doing a Japanese film tonight. Um, our first in probably a little while. This is Cure from 1997 from director Kiyoshi Kurosawa. No relation to the more famous Kurosawa, but still a pretty well-known Japanese filmmaker in his own right. He's been around since the early 80s, so he'd been this is 97, so he this was sort of his breakthrough film, but he'd been in the biz for quite a while. He directed quite a lot, and he's got a really interesting style, and he's got a really interesting just body of work. His first movie was one of the so-called pink movies, the softcore porn that was pretty big for a while in Japan. That's his first ever directing credit. He also did made for TV movies. Even after this, he did made for TV movies. He did a couple direct to video movies. One of the movies that interests me the most and I've always wanted to see, I think maybe you can watch it on YouTube, I'm not sure, is the movie Sweet Home. For those that don't know, or if you have an interest in things like Resident Evil, people often talk about Resident Evil, the video game, of course, and it's like really making the subgenre, the survival horror, making that a thing. And people say, well, there was stuff that predates it, and I think most people think of Alone in the Dark from the early 90s predates it. But if you want to go for like even further, there's a 1989 NES game that was Famicom game. So just Famicom, because it never got an English translation, never got released over here. You can understand why. This is a time when Nintendo of America was censoring the shit out of everything. There was a video game called Sweet Home. And I think the movie and the game were made at like the same time. Like, I guess it was some sort of dual thing. It's not, the game is not based on the movie, and the movie is not based on the game. They're just two, I guess, companion pieces, you might want to call them. They do have the same plot, which is about a small film crew that goes to like a supposedly haunted house to like check things out, and then craziness ensues. And the game is interesting in that it is survival horror, but it's done in the way like sort of like an RPG, in that you run around, you have a party of more than one, of multiple people, and as you move, you get into random battles on the screen. But with some of the survival horror elements into it, besides just being in a haunted house type place, getting attacked by ghosts and demons and stuff, is that you do have to like find items and things to like progress through the house. And the other thing is like every fight drains you. It's really hard to it's not like your normal fantasy RPG where you have like spells and stuff where you can like, replenish your HP. Like, it's really hard to replenish because, again, there's a whole survival horror element. Well, what's one of the core facets of survival horror? It's limited resources, and that's how this is. And it's very possible to have party members die, and if they die, they're gone forever. There's no bringing them back. So you really have to be careful in how you manage things now. And also, I can't remember how many characters total there are, but it is possible to split the party into two separate parties and have them explore independently. In fact, you have to do that. Anyway, it's a really fascinating game for that standpoint. But also, the movie is supposed to be pretty cool. It's supposed to be very kind of like a Sam Raimi type of movie, full of like demons and gore and schlock. And I've always been interested in it. So I don't think it registered with me at the time, because I'd known about the movie for years, that was yet another movie that Kurosawa had done. But it makes a lot of sense because he's really good at those sort of genre films. So that's definitely something I want to see soon. And obviously, watching this movie again really just makes me interested in tracking down a bunch of his movies, because I've only seen a couple.
It sounds really cool, the game and the movie. That's one of his I haven't seen. You mentioned this movie, and then you started talking about Kurosawa, and I was like, what the hell is Cole talking about Kurosawa for? I didn't even realize that, the director's
the
name.
other Kurosawa. Yeah.
But no, I've seen quite a few of his movies. I mean, he's a very prolific guy. But let me see how many credits he has here.
It goes all the way back to about 83.
63 directing credits.
Yeah, so and of that, a lot of them are feature films.
Mm-hmm.
See, a lot of it is called V Cinema, which is direct to video. So that makes up about a quarter of his stuff. A couple of them were sort of those cheap Yakuza crime movies in the early 90s. For Yakuza Taxi, Men of Rage, Then there's a whole series of movies that have a really funny title called Suit Yourself or Shoot Yourself. And there's a whole bunch of those. And he was doing those all throughout the 90s while he was doing other sort of like feature films, although that was really the main thing he'd done. But yeah, Sweet Home, I guess, was maybe his kind of legit movie in a way, if you don't want to count his Pink movie, which has a great title, Kandagawa Pervert Wars.
And most people,
Which
if you're not familiar with this film, you probably heard of Pulse or Cairo, which is probably his more popular horror film.
Right. And you can see a lot of similarities between this movie
Mm-hmm.
and Pulse. Pulse is a more straightforward, sort of supernatural horror type movie. But one thing I always say about Pulse is that it is possibly, like, as far as maybe not content, although content is up there, but as far as atmosphere goes, it's the bleakest movie I've ever seen in my life. And this movie has so much of that. You can feel the same bleakness, that sense of impending dread, just running throughout the film. I mean, it's even more so in Pulse, but in this, it's impressive because, I mean, there was it was a period when I'd seen both movies, but probably wasn't even aware it was the same director. This movie was, again, part of a wave of Asian movies that I had seen in the early 2000s, my first couple of years at university when I was watching this stuff with friends. So anytime between, say, like 2001 and 2004 or so, maybe even 2005, there's just a bunch of those movies that I saw. Specifically, there was this one. There was the very infamous Audition. There's one we've already done on here. Actually, a couple we've already done in here, like Old Boy.
We've done Pulse on here, right?
We haven't.
We have not. Okay, we've done it on something. I think we both are pretty big fans of that one.
We are, but we haven't actually done a proper episode on it. But yeah,
probably this is our first J horror, actually.
Mine too, I think. Speaking of that, again, a lot of it was horror, like Shudder. That was another one from that era that I saw back then. And of course, the big one for me, the one that really made me love Japanese cinema beyond, anime. I was always into anime. Was Battle Royale. I saw like all those movies, including this one, sometime again around between 2001, 2004, 2005-ish. I was watching a lot of those, and this is one of those from way back when. And this is what literally was my first time watching it. Since then, I hadn't seen it in all those years since. Saw Pulse a little bit after that. Pulse was not during that period. It was a little bit after that. Actually, what year did Pulse even come release? So that's actually...
it was maybe a couple after this. Let's see.
It's it is 2001. So actually, it's weird that I didn't see it back then because it's from that era. But I didn't actually see it quite then. I saw it probably later 2000s, maybe even around 2010. It's hard to say. It all kind of blurs. But Pulse or Cairo, I didn't see it at the same time as I was seeing a lot of these others. So
yeah, I mean, probably Ringu would probably be the one credited for bringing a lot of that over to North
and that's
America.
another one.
Yeah,
another one I saw back then.
I mean, with the and then they were doing the American remake trend, which at least it gave us the original movies on DVD. Over here.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, most of those remakes are bad, but I love The Ring. I think The Ring is an excellent remake.
I think The Ring's great. Probably one of the best.
I like both movies equally. I like Ringu and I like The Ring. I like them probably equally. And there's actually are some things I think that The Ring does do better. I mean,
I agree with that. They're great companion movies, and the rest of that franchise. I mean, not the Ringu franchise. The Ring franchise is pretty much garbage, but
it is. Yeah.
Rings, and then I like the prequel movie.
Yeah, Zero. I like it. I like it too.
Yeah,
Zero.
That's definitely the best next to the original movie.
Yeah, I like that one. So this movie stands out a little from those, in that a lot of those are more. Again, I don't want to say like they're less creative, because actually that whole J-horror thing, late 90s, early 2000s, the whole point, one of the reasons it caught on over here is because it was original. It was very different from horror movies over here. So I'm not going to be like, I just mean this is different from that, and this is probably not supernatural, probably more real world. And the movie gets compared a lot to is Seven. Seven came out just a couple years before it, and they do have some things in common, particularly like their atmosphere. I can see Kurosawa and Fincher have some common ground in their styles. So I can understand a lot of the 7 things. What's funny is like 7 is arguably darker, although this is more dark than you might think. But I would still say this has the more bleak atmosphere than 7.
He does a great job of like making you, on edge without actually having to show you the action, It does a great job of the tone.
And it's missing a lot of those like more dramatic things that you see in more obvious movies. One is music. There's almost no music in this movie. As far as I can remember, there's only 2 instances of music, and both times it's just a simple piano piece. Not the opening scene, because the opening scene is his wife in the hospital, but the opening murder has some jaunty little piano while the opening murder takes place. And then much later on, when he decides to fully commit his wife, when they're traveling to take her to the hospital, once again, there's some like nice piano playing. And that's it. Like I watched it again, and like the end credits don't even have any music. So there's no music in this movie besides those 2 instances. I always wonder why they chose there, because the rest is completely there's none. So like there's no musical cues, there's no musical stings or set up to even set the atmosphere, which is what a lot of movies do, right? It's like sometimes you'll watch a movie and the whole point is you're watching a scene where it seems like pretty normal stuff, but the music is giving you cues that something's not right and it's building to something scary or sinister. That's completely absent from this movie. So that's one thing that I always think of. And of course, the environments is another one. And it's another thing I think almost ties in with 7. Like, I like how...
I think you may have an alarm going off.
I do. You know what? It's kind of, for all the years we've been doing this show, it's kind of amazing this has never happened, because the alarm goes off here so fucking often. Although this is probably the first time. Yeah, dude, has this happened since Christmas? At least once it has, yeah. I mean, this used to be like a monthly occurrence.
So do you have to?
Yeah, I have an alarm going off. I never do. I used to. No, there's nobody that can make me or anything like that. Sometimes what I'll do is if I go to the stairs over there, I can sort of see the courtyard. It's always the same song and dance. The fire department will show up. They will go in. Certain people will go out and they'll take their pets and their kids and stuff like that. And the only reason why I consider it is because I do have a cat again. But yeah, fuck. But I mean, it's never anything. This building must get horrible fines, because it's never fucking anything. I've lived here for many years, and I can't tell you how many of these have gone off. And a lot of them in the middle of the night now. Either it's nothing, or it's some idiot, set off their smoke detector cooking or something like that, right? But man, it happens so much. It's kind of amazing. This is the first time this has ever happened while we were doing this show, because it happens a lot.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah.
Wow. Of all the years that we've been streaming.
Yeah, and it would happen practically every month or every 2 months. It was just such a normal thing, and it's never anything, and I never go out. There were at least a couple times where, like, I remember once they were looking for something, because firemen actually came right into the hallway I'm in, which is really weird because it's almost never this section. And they did have somebody knocking on doors, but that happened like once in like 8 or 9 years that I've been around for. But maybe in a minute, because it is super distracting, I can't do anything about it, unfortunately. Because this could go on for 15, 20 minutes. How loud? I can close my bedroom door over. I guess that'll help a little.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
But, I've always been a little shit. I've always been a terrible person, I guess. Never done that. Who gets their jollies by like pulling the fire alarm? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's ever that. I don't think anybody's pulling the alarm. There's just something wrong with the system. It's very sensitive, and like I said, no, I don't think it's people doing that at all. What's funny is once they tried to charge me for it. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What's weird is they didn't even contact me about it. They just suddenly billed me saying that it was related to me causing a fire alarm. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, obviously I didn't do that. But even, let's pretend in a scenario that I had done that. Like, wouldn't it be like, shouldn't they say something to me about it first? Like, they let months go by and they're like, by the way, this is for the fire alarm you caused. So I was like, I've never set off my smoke alarm ever. So
we need some sort of proof, right?
Yeah, I know. They just casually tacked $200 onto my rent and said it was because of a fire alarm.
Wow, that's a lot.
Crazy. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, again,
like I say, I think the building must get fined. Like, they must get fined. They're basically wasting the fire department's time. They come down here, you know, I'm sure they might even already be here. I mean, I'm sorry, people, about this happening to our show. And then I might even have to go up and take a look just to see what's going on, but it's never anything. And I mean, I give credit to the people that follow the rules. That, you know, sometimes this happens in, like, this is fairly early. This will happen at like 2 a.m. It's happened all sorts of times, and I'll see people, they'll get up, they'll go outside. Like, it's like, fuck all of that.
When I lived in the dorm at college, we had to leave. You know, everybody had to exit. They had to go check every room.
Oh yeah, they made us then, because I had it happen when my second year of university, when I lived at the Roost. There was some legitimate problem. So this was like the very start of the year, September. The alarm went off, like, I'd say 7 times that month. After that, they finally fixed it, and it never happened again, at least as far as for the rest of the school year goes. But yeah, so yeah, every time we had to leave. That was just the rule. They bang on the doors, the RAs and stuff, and they make you leave. But it was always like some asshole just screwing with us, usually someone from another dorm, because they knew that we all had to, you know, come outside and do that whole rigmarole. No, I think there was some actual issue because it happened over and over again for a month. Then whatever it was, they finally fixed it. Here, like I said, I think it's just overly sensitive. Like, somebody's smoke alarm goes off and that's enough. Yeah. I mean, you can set off your smoke alarm with your shower. A lot of people do that sometimes. But it's a really grating, annoying alarm as you hear it. It goes in threes. It's 3 really loud things. It's pretty annoying. But I'm going to ignore it, and we'll try to get back to what I was talking about, whatever it was, which was 7. And I was saying, another thing I think this has in common with 7. These are good noise canceling headphones, so you hear it more than I do. It was the locations, because I liked how 7 was deliberately set in like a city that's not named. It's supposed to be just some city. And like a lot of the environments in 7, you know, they were sort of dingy and grimy.
Right.
It's always raining and stuff like that. This actually is even more so than 7. This is a very dingy, grimy movie. To the point that it's not even realistic, I think, in a way. It makes it feel otherworldly, because it's like, what kind of, like, the hospital, right? That is one dingy, grimy hospital. You think the one place that would be sterile and bright and clean, and yet it's still low light and kind of dingy and grimy, which I think is pretty hilarious. Everything kind of has a 50s aesthetic. I mean, what's up with that weird prison that they put Maya in? Like, what is that place? It looks like a sanitarium from like the 1930s or something. And like its roof is leaking all the time, and the lighting is so low, and everything about it is so low tech and old. Because one thing about 7 is, like, even 7 had at least a couple pristine, clean environments. One is Mills's apartment. Mills's apartment is a pretty normal apartment, and then the library where they go to look stuff up. It's a pretty nice library. After that, it is kind of all dingy, grimy stuff. At least you have that. This doesn't have any. Like, literally every environment is dingy and grimy and run down and like dark, which I like. Again, maybe it's a little less realistic, but it sets a really great mood for the movie and gives you an idea. And again, adds just to that whole pervasive oppression and dread and bleakness that runs through this movie. So I totally get why people compare it to 7, but it's still quite different. I guess another thing you compare to 7 is it has to do with a detective taking things too personally and sort of falling into the killer's trap also. Again, that happens to Mills. Somerset is mourning Mills. He's telling Mills being Brad Pitt's character. He's saying, don't underestimate this guy, and also you can't get involved with him. And he just ignores him, which leads to his own wife getting killed. Spoilers for 7. I can't imagine anybody watching this.
Anyone that hasn't, what's in the box?
It's still fucking going. But Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
in
What
the
was it?
box?
What was in the box? I don't know what he's talking about. I never bothered to check. But yeah, because I mean, well, part of that is the whole point is, John Doe had a meticulous plan that he'd been carrying out for over a year. But the whole thing is killing Mills's wife was not part of the original plan. He adopted it into the plan after he became interested in Mills after they had their run-in. And that's kind of something that happens here is that you've got let me get our characters' names straight once again because I don't because our main detective here is Takabe, but anyway, the guy I'm talking about is
Who's the psychologist guy?
yeah, is it Sakuma? I believe Sakuma is the psychologist, but that's who I met. He's the one that warns him. He's like, don't talk to once they have him in custody. He's like, no good will come from talking to this guy. And even he winds up falling into it, even though he thinks he's being careful. He winds up a victim as well.
He killed himself, right?
Yeah, which, I mean, I guess we don't have to do this in any particular order or anything. Because I was thinking, like, one of the things he tells him early on when Takabe first suggests the idea that this could be hypnotism, that's what's causing these murders. And he tells him what is, as far as I know, the pervading idea, which is, you can, a talented hypnotist can get people to do stuff, but to get them to do something as extreme as murder is pretty much impossible. If somebody actually believes his murder is wrong, no amount of hypnosis is going to make them do it. So one of the things, as you see the reactions of the various killers and how they talk about why they killed them, it is a little fuzzy. Because in the case of the cop, I think he is telling the truth that he didn't like the partner he was with that he killed. But the difference was it's not like he ever really wanted to kill him. But he brought up feelings that were, I think, really there. He really did resent this guy who he thought wasn't a good cop, and he thought he was carrying him. He said, I put up with him for years. I don't think that's implanted. I think that's already in him, and it's brought out, and then it's used as a reason for killing him. But then you have a guy like the young couple. He killed his wife. He loved his wife very much. So why would he kill his wife? And he has no explanation. He just breaks down. He's like, why did I kill her? I don't understand. And he totally breaks down. So, and then I was trying to get back to our psychologist who killed himself. Is that because he had a suggestion implanted to just kill himself? Or was it because he had the normal shtick, which is, kill the next person you come in contact with, and he had such moral fortitude or that he couldn't do it, so he killed himself instead? There's a lot of open-ended stuff like that. So, to fully understand how this method works, exactly what it can induce people to do and how they react, and some of it is maybe just come down to different individuals and their own sensibilities. One of the things I've never been clear on, and it depends upon where you read sources, is Takabe's own reaction, at least at first, to the hypnosis. Because I've read things online and stuff that say, one of the reasons that are, it's not a killer, but Mamiya is fascinated with Takabe and says you're amazing, is because he's resistant to the hypnosis. He can't do it. But I don't think you have to believe that. That's not necessarily what I thought when I watched the movie. I always thought that Mamiya was he was just interested in him, and it was deliberately not using his full shtick on him. But I've read things that are very matter of fact. It's this is why he's fascinated by Takabe, that Takabe is immune to him. It's well, if he's immune to him, then what happens at the end exactly? So
right.
I don't know. So some things I've seen written down as if it's matter of fact, but I think it's more open to interpretation.
It is.
Was Mamiya actually actively from the very beginning always trying to use it on Takabe? It almost seems like it's more amusing to him to do it to the people around him and see him live with the consequences.
Well, we don't even really know what's happening. I mean, they say hypnosis, but it's almost more supernatural, than just, typical hypnosis, because obviously the end sequence, the end scene.
Right. I mean, the whole point is either you can infer something supernatural, or you can just say this is a kind of hypnosis that, for whatever reason, works a lot better than any that has ever been discovered or used before, right?
Yeah,
So
but
you
I
can
mean,
look at
he's
it either way.
dead. You know, he's dead at the end, and it's still continuing. You know,
Well,
right?
there's either that. Well, exactly, and you could either say that he was doing more of a long game with Takabe. That instead of doing like a brief thing where he meets with somebody and he gets them to kill the next, he's turning him into the next himself. Is what he's doing. So you could say either that was a long game done by multiple having multiple conversations and multiple meetings, or it's the whole he listened to that like phonograph at the end, right? Like maybe the phonograph did it.
Right, right.
Because that's the last thing he does after they have the conversation. He then goes in to listen to that. But man, there's some weird choices in this movie as far as like pacing goes or the decision, because a lot of scenes have like long shots that linger and hold on things, and it takes you a long time to understand why they're significant. But if you are patient and watch, you usually see the payoff. Oh, I get why it's not that Kurosawa, Jesse, but Jess, not Jesse, Jess, but yeah, there we go. What was
Pacing.
I saying? Oh yeah, those the long shots. I just mean there's some extremely quick editing in some of this, to the point where if you look away, you'll miss something huge, like the death of, again, we're doing full spoilers, people, but the death of Takabe's wife. That's on screen for what, 2 seconds?
Yeah.
And it's not her death; it's just showing her dead. We don't see her being killed. And again, I've read that it's inferred that Takabe killed her, which makes sense. But the only thing that, again, that makes him different, I don't get, is the whole point of all these murders is like none of them in any way, all they've programmed to do is kill somebody. They're not programmed to try to cover it up or get away. That's the whole point, right? That's what's so weird when it starts. You have this series of murders, and it's like the first guy literally left his ID out there, and then they just found him in the same room because like he was starting to snap back to normal. Like the whole point was these people aren't trying to get away with the murder. So if Takabe was, I mean, how did he pull this murder off? He went into a hospital, like a protected hospital where patients aren't even allowed to leave. She's in like, like some sort of like psych ward. He went in there and murdered her and walked out and nobody saw anything. So it was never clear to me at all that he killed her. I thought maybe she killed herself.
I didn't ever think that he killed her. Yeah, okay.
Oh. Well, but again, if you read certain things, let's see if he even says it on Wikipedia. Yeah, Wikipedia doesn't. But I have seen certain things that infer that he killed her, and that's one of the reasons why he seems so content in the end scene at the restaurant, because she was a burden and he had removed her. But I'm just thinking, like, if you're trying to infer that he was programmed to kill her or whatever like that, I'm like, how did he get away with it? Because the whole point was none of these killers get away with it. They commit the murder and they're immediately caught because they in no way even attempt to.
Well, they don't even know that they don't even remember what happened.
No, they do. They do remember. Isn't that what makes it weird? That they do remember. It's not like they blacked out and went to a fugue state. They all remember. That's one thing that's common. They all remember doing it, but they can't say why, except for the cop who had some lingering resentment for the guy. So he just used that as a motive. He's like, I didn't like him, so that's why I decided to kill him. And they're like, so you were angry? It's like, no, I was completely calm. But no, they all remember. In none of these cases, it's not like they just black out, go into a fugue state, kill them, and wake up. They all remember it perfectly.
Okay.
That's one of the things that makes it so confusing at first.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew the cop remembered. So, okay. Yeah, I think that may be the only on-screen death in the movie other than what's his name? Mayima?
Well, we have the first murder we see the guy kill the prostitute with the pipe.
Okay. But most of it is off. Most of
it's off screen. It's really confusing at first with the couple, because like, so he killed his wife, and then like in like his like surprise or I don't know, throws himself through the window. It's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
because he comes flying out the window, and you're first thinking,
Right.
"Oh, did the wife kill him? Was the wife programmed to kill him?" But you see, he lived, and he killed her first. Like I said, some of this stuff goes by really fast, and you will miss it, and you won't know what the fuck happens. You have to watch this movie.
And it's what, just a hair under 2 hours. It's not a short movie, but it's a lot that happens in that period of time.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't get all of those quick things either. There's a part early on in the movie that shows Takabe leaving either his house. I think he's leaving his house. And it's really fast shots. It's like he's walking down some stairs, cut away. Now suddenly he's in a tunnel and he's looking at a pipe with water coming out of it. Cut away. Like some of that, I don't understand what it's doing or what it means. Later stuff, I was confused and it did make sense. Like when it showed his wife out somewhere, it kept showing her in places and cutting away. Then it reveals, as part of her condition, she got lost on the way to the hospital. She even tells her doctor that she got lost. But then, she eventually found her way. She didn't really remember how, so she was just in front. But even at first, I was wondering, like the first time I watched the movie, probably years ago. So I watched it twice in the last week. So the first time I watched it, this time, like I was confused by that, but at least that got explained. But I was like, some of this stuff, I don't get, like why it goes so fast. And here's another thing: is this my face blindness again, or what? There are two different scenes showing a woman. It's a far away shot of a woman who's obviously in a house or apartment, and she seems to be doing some work at a table, listening to a tape of Spanish. Who is that? Do you even remember that?
I don't remember.
Because they show it once. It's just they set the camera kind of far away. We're not in the same room. It's in a room further back, and she's sitting at a table like she's writing stuff down, and we're listening to a tape. We know it's a tape because at one point she rewinds it, and you hear the tape rewind sound while it's speaking Spanish. It's like somebody's either trying to learn Spanish or something like that. There's a very quick shot of Takabe when he's having some flashbacks or memories, and that is one of them. And I have no idea what it means. It doesn't look like his wife. It looked like she had a shorter hairstyle. So I have no idea what narrative purpose that served or who that woman was supposed to be. Maybe I just watched the movie wrong, but I watched it and I tried to understand, and I just don't understand what it was. It didn't seem to fit into the story at all. It didn't seem to ever come up unless that was his wife, but it didn't look like her at all to me. But maybe it really was her. I don't know. The only reason I even would have thought that it was possibly his wife is that it shows him very quickly like having a flash of it. There's a few times because I think it's right after he left Mayama's apartment, because he has some really quick flashes of that too, like animals in the cages and stuff, like super fast. Again, look away, you won't see it. This is a movie where you can't look away or you will miss sometimes important stuff, or just sometimes, I don't know, confusing stuff. But it's so easy to miss the fact that his wife got, I think 20 some years ago or whatever, when I watched this movie the first time, I didn't even see the ending. I didn't even notice that waitress had a knife back then. I'm sure I didn't notice that the first time. It was just ends with him sitting in a restaurant, and for some reason that I didn't understand, the camera followed this I keep wanting to say nurse, this waitress for too long a period, and it just goes to thing. And then I finally realized that, it finally shows her holding a knife in a weaponized fashion, which is a good way of ending it. Like, apparently they originally had a scene where it does show her killing someone. It's better not. It's better to just really quickly imply it. It is done better that way. But I think, again, that's not quick. That is actually a very long take. I'm just saying, when she actually picks up the knife, then it's very quick. So again, if you looked away or blinked or whatever for that minute, you might just think we just followed this waitress for almost a full minute and nothing happened, and now it's over. Because once she picks up the knife, I swear the cut is less than 2 seconds before it cuts to credits. So some really quick cuts here. So I don't know if it's
lots
fun
of
for him
cuts, but also lots of lingering shots, like
that's what I mean. Yeah,
the whole sequence with the cop when he shoots his partner or whatever. It shows them doing their, whatever mundane, police activities for a good while. It's what, 2 or 3 minutes, and then he just pulls out his gun and shoots him.
Yeah, and then it continues on after that too. It doesn't cut after that either. Right?
Right.
Shows them sort of going over the body. Because the other thing, I guess, that we left out is the other thing sort of tying the murders together, besides the fact that they just seem to be random and out of nowhere by people who had no reason to commit them, is that after they kill the person, they always like slash some sort of X onto the victim's body. So as this goes, you know, I mean, that's the point. You're like sort of completely at sea. We finally, I mean, we don't see him meeting the first killer. We don't see that at all. We see him on the beach. He meets the couple. And then we find out that the man killed his wife. So we can infer that guy maybe had something to do with it, but we have no idea what it can mean at that point. The first time we really get it, even in the police box, you're not really sure. I mean, till the hospital scene that you can finally piece together what he's doing when he has the scene with the doctor. Because other scenes, they stop before they even get going. This one actually shows the whole thing. As far as I know, it's the whole thing. I think so, because he throws water in her face, and then she just sort of wipes herself and moves off. So as far as I know, he didn't say anything more to her after that. That was their entire interaction. And that's the first time we saw that. All the other ones, I think before we only saw part of it before we cut to another scene. So with the doctor, you finally figure out that he is purposely doing something.
And it's really like, tell me a little bit about yourself, and that's pretty much it. And now you're hypnotized.
Yeah, it's interesting. He can either it's like repetition of things, and then either like light or water. You know, he uses the lighter a couple times, but then like she tells him right up in a hospital, obviously you can't smoke.
Can't smoke.
But that's okay. He goes over to the water and he spills the water, and just the moving water is enough to put her under. And you see him attempt sort of both things once he's in captivity when he's talking to Takabe, because he takes the lighter and Takabe knocks the lighter away. But then, just because, like I said, they're in such a weird, decrepit world, the roof is leaking, so water starts dripping down and pooling on the floor. And this is the big hint. Like, you probably don't notice the first time you watch it, but if you watch it again, the big hint about how the ending might come is he's starting to sort of do it, and the water's pooling. And Mayama says, the water will make you calm and make you feel good or something like that. But then he says, and you'll be reborn just like I was. And that is how it ends. Because that's the other thing, like, how much of his memory is there? Because, again, if you read certain things, they say he's faking the short-term memory loss. It's just part of his shtick. But I think it's clear that some of the memory is gone. And Takabe hints at it, like the idea, like, you used to be a person with a personality. Then this thing sort of took you over. And he says, you remember, he even says that to the doctor. He says something like, whatever was inside of me is gone now. And now I'm empty inside, but I feel better. So it seems to suggest he does sort of remember that he had a separate identity before all this, but he doesn't mind. Because that's the other thing. The whole thing is like, how much can you even put this on, Mayama? You know, how much of it is him or how much of it is like the programming? Because you can either say he stumbled across this stuff, or that it's been going on for about 100 years. Because it's like, it dates back at least to the late 19th century. They find the tape of stuff of it, the thing with the woman being hypnotized and then killing her son. And so I think it suggests that he's probably the latest in a long line of people that have sort of passed it on. It's almost like passing on an infection or something like that. It's programming. And it ends with Takabe being the next to take it up.
I was thinking, you know, he has the big scar on his back, and he says something hot and flat, or round and flat. And
that was just a clue to get to where he was working, right?
Okay. But I didn't know, maybe there was some connection there with, you know, how he became able to do this. But, you know, he did, you know, that when they found all his stuff, he did research that thoroughly. So,
yeah. As far as I know, it was just a lead so they could help track him down. They were looking for a place where that could happen, and they were able to track him down to that junkyard place or whatever it was where he was working. Because, again, the idea was he was a young, bright student, and then his life just swerved, and then you find out why. It sounds more like he fell into it than he did something. It was almost like he fell into a trap, and it changed him, and now he's become this, and his old identity is gone.
Well,
it's interesting.
He looks like a relatively young guy anyway. Didn't you think?
Oh, yeah. They say something like when the cops take him in, they say late 20s, probably.
Okay. That's about what I would guess. But, you know, to be that advanced in, you know, hypnotism, you think it would probably take a little bit of practice. But
Again, I think maybe they're saying he and both Takabe are there's something special about them.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's why, like, I never thought that Takabe was necessarily immune to it. I thought he saw something in him to realize that he had the same potential as he did, because what he was doing was he could hypnotize people and get them to kill somebody, but that was kind of the end of it. But there is a way to pass on your own programming so that you can do it to other people, which is what happens at the end with Takabe. And I always thought he recognized that in him. When he said, like, you're fascinating, you're amazing, I always thought that's what he meant. Like, he saw that potential in Takabe. Like, you could do what I do.
So we're supposed to assume that's what he's doing at the end, that he is forced that lady to kill another person through hypnotism. Because I was thinking that she was going to kill him.
Oh.
I mean, I guess we don't really know, but
I mean, there's no way to say no. That never occurred to me. But yeah, I think at least the most obvious thing is, like, yeah, now Takabe can do the same stuff as Mayama, and it's been passed on to him. And now, but it is weird though, because, like, what was his interaction with the waitress? How did he do it? Like, he barely even looked at her.
We didn't see it.
He barely even looked at her.
That he's just there in the cafe or wherever.
They have a few words. He doesn't even, like, look up at her. But no, I mean, like I said, a lot of this is open-ended, but I'm pretty sure that is word of God, that he is now like Mayama, and he's just done it to the waitress, and she's, going to kill some random person.
I definitely like it being open-ended. I like that not a lot of it is explained. It leaves a lot of it in the air. You don't really know exactly what's going on.
Right.
It's an interesting concept for a serial killer too.
Another reason why I didn't buy the idea that some people say, like, that Takabe is immune is that, like, he was able to affect him in other ways. He induces that hallucination of his wife killing herself. We know that he did, because he says it when he comes back. He's like, you saw your wife kill herself, right? Meaning he implanted it. So Takabe was susceptible to stuff he did. I just don't think he was. I think he saw him as somebody more interesting than, I'll just do my usual stick. I'll talk to him, and then he'll go off and murder somebody, and that'll kind of be the end of it. It's like he saw more potential Takabe. Like, he could maybe have him pass on. I don't think he necessarily wanted to die. I do like that moment. It's kind of a subversive. He's going to have one of his big villains monologues at the end, and Takabe simply shoots him. And then even at the end, when he thought he could let him have a final word, he shoots him 5 more times. Because he says, like, do you remember now? Do you remember it all? And he nods, like, yeah, I do. But then whatever he's going to say after that, Takabe doesn't want to hear it and kills him. So it's weird, because at that point, Takabe killing him is still him, I think. He hasn't been taken over. He wanted to kill him. He couldn't stand the man, what he put him through.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like once we transition to the next scene, he's not himself anymore. He's kind of the new Mayama.
It's with the hallucinations, it's kind of hard to even know what's real and what's not, because the sequence when he's driving his wife to be committed.
Yeah.
Is that a dream sequence? Because they're, like, in the clouds, like they're in the sky.
Yeah, I never understood exactly what that was supposed to be either. I thought that too. It's like they're in the back of some sort of, like, if it's supposed to be like a bus or something, it's like, yeah, well, it looks like they're in the sky. Are they in a gondola? But then later they see him take it by himself, right? There's a later scene where he's on it by himself, and it's the same thing. It looks like he's up in the sky. I just think that's I think that's just a stylistic choice. I don't think it's supposed to be a dream sequence exactly. I think I don't know though. I mean, it is true that he brought her to commit her. That did happen. But maybe
I mean, it shows them when they get there, right? It shows her him bringing her there and dropping her off and stuff.
Well, I mean, coming back to the music again, that's the only other time music is used in the movie, which feels like that must have a purpose. Why are we using music here? So maybe it suggests it's sort of how he imagined it more. I don't know.
Right.
It's weird because at first, like, she says something like, "Oh, we're going to Okinawa, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, "We're not going to Okinawa." And she just says, "I know."
I know. Yeah.
I mean, she's the most tragic character. And one of the, like, I almost hate the movie for killing her, really. Like, I love the bleakness of the movie. I love the the creeping inevitability of everything and sort of the bad guy wins. I do love all that, but I still do really feel bad for her dying because she was such an innocent character.
But we don't know how she dies either, right? I mean, we just know that she does die.
We know that she does die, and again, you could look away and not even know it. So you have to watch. It shows her dead. Like, what is she? She's up on something. I don't know. It's so fast. It's like 3 seconds. I don't know why they do it so fast. Like, I get it. She's dead, but is she moving? Did she kill herself? As I said, if I look up certain things, like I'm on TV Tropes here, and they just talk matter-of-factly like that Takabe killed her himself. But as I said, logistically, it doesn't seem very possible. It's not like the other kills. The other kills, the whole point was, yeah, they killed a person, but the whole point was they immediately got caught because they didn't try to cover it up or get away in any way. He's supposed to go into this sort of high security hospital, murder his own wife, and waltz out without anybody knowing. Like, I have a hard time buying that. So I feel like maybe she killed herself and it's almost unrelated. Like, her problems got to be too much for her and she did kill herself. I don't know.
So it says matter of fact that he killed her. I never even, I mean, it didn't really cross my mind because, for one, it doesn't tell the audience that that's what happened.
No.
Right? I mean, unless I'm.
Well, again, this is matter of fact, but these are just random people, so you have to take that. I'm trying to find where one of the places where it says
that's an odd interpretation, because I didn't get that, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely strongly implied that he's gotten those abilities and that he's inciting the waitress to do a murder and, continue the chain. But as far as his own wife goes, I just don't see how we're supposed to buy that he killed her, because how would he kill her and then just get away with it? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
He's above the law.
I am the law. See, this one says here, the load. Takabe admits he views Fumie, that's his wife, as this, and resents having to take care of her for her entire life, even while fearing her death. Eventually, he commits her to a mental hospital. After killing Mayama and listening to the phonograph, Takabe murders his wife off screen, is visibly happier as he eats in the restaurant. See, I don't buy that, because I don't know how he could possibly pull it off. He just, I don't know. He might be visibly happier. He does seem pretty content in the restaurant, I guess. I don't know if he's happy, but I always just thought that meant he didn't know his wife was dead. Like, he was just continuing on. It was like, okay, I killed the guy, and now I can continue on with what I want to do. But yeah. But no, I don't buy that he killed his wife, because I just don't know how he would have pulled it off. And if they wanted to say he indirectly killed his wife, they have to show us a little bit more then, right?
Right.
If he talked to somebody at the hospital and, it incited them to go kill her, they have to at least show something for us to connect those dots. So, yeah, I'm very surprised by people that would interpret it as her death. I just thought perhaps she killed herself, and it just adds to the conga line of tragedy. It never occurred to me that he murdered his own wife, because I just don't know how he could possibly get away with it. If she hadn't been at the hospital and they were still living together at home, if they showed her dead in their home, I would believe it, that he killed his wife. Why wouldn't he? She's dead and she's in the home, but she's in the hospital. She's surrounded by doctors and patients and other people. So I don't get how he could stroll in there, murder her, and stroll out. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, yeah.
I don't know if I buy that.
As I said, I don't buy it at all. I always thought that she probably killed herself. That it was kind of... I never thought she was murdered. I thought she killed herself. That, things came up to it. And I will say another thing about the movie itself. Like, there's an interpretation that I didn't quite understand. It's like the opening scene with her talking to her doctor. She talks about the story of Bluebeard. I have tried really hard to connect Bluebeard to this plot, but there's just no way. Bluebeard is a story about a man who marries women and murders them until one of them eventually kills him, right? He keeps finding women to marry, and then he locks them up in his castle, and he eventually kills them. And I think eventually some heroine survives him and kills him. That's what she says. Like the young daughter, she says, "I know how it ends. The daughter kills him." I think that's right. In any case, I at least know the broad strokes of Bluebeard is he's a man who murders women. But that's really doesn't have any sort of connection or parallel that I can think of to this plot. I mean, it has murder in it, and that's about it. So I was always surprised that, I don't know, usually when you're going to have mention of like a, you know, something literary, like a story or something, usually there's some sort of connection to be made. Like, I just never understood why that opening scene is Bluebeard. Maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it could have been anything, but I was just like, why include it then? Because, I mean, really the only purpose it serves is that later on when she's talking to the doctor, she picks up the book and he says, oh yeah, we were talking about that earlier. She's like, I've never read this. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I guess, again, to show sort of her mental issues is that she has no memory of the conversation. But I just mean, usually, like I said, if there's a story within a movie or, you know, a reference to some book or story, I always look for a connection. And I can't find any here. I have no idea why Bluebeard. And again, maybe it doesn't matter. To me, usually, if you're going to do that, it should serve a purpose. I don't know. It's not a huge complaint or anything. And maybe there is something I'm missing. Maybe there is some way that Bluebeard connects to this, but I don't see it. The only connection I see is murder. And as we know, this movie is not straightforward at all about murder. It's completely indirect and weird about murder. It's about a killer who isn't really killing anybody himself. He's causing others to kill. It's also weird too, like how, I don't know if that's a good plot swerve that he manages to murder a guard to break out, because it does sort of go against who he is. Is it though? How? I don't see how it's a metaphor. I mean, if you say he kills his wife in the end, maybe. But I don't really buy that he kills his wife, because I don't see how he possibly could have done that. I don't know. I feel like they could have picked a different sort of classic story. I mean, this is a very specific plot. Like, what are you going to compare it to? But I just mean, even if we're talking just broad strokes, there must be something that lines up better than Bluebeard. I don't know.
I guarantee you they've workshopped a remake script for this movie, because it's too revered for them to have not at least talked about it.
Yeah, it's got a Criterion and everything, which I'd like to get. What sucks is too, it reminded me of like the shitty quality I watched it on online, because actually just today I found a couple videos on YouTube with people just talking about it, and they were showing clips from it, and they obviously had like the Blu-ray, and it looks so much better than the way I had to watch it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't look too bad, because again, the whole point is this is not a movie full of, you know, sumptuous detail or beautiful cinematography. It's grimy and stuff, but I mean, still, it is nice to see things in a nice high def, which I definitely didn't see it in.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was the same director. I'm sure that I did know that at some point, or maybe I just happened to watch both, as I, went through a period of time when I tried to track down all of this that I could.
Oh, you mean that's Pulse?
Yeah, I mean, just the Japanese horror movies. Yeah, I just didn't. I mean, I didn't realize it before we were preparing for the show.
I didn't know it for quite a few years, and then it becomes so obvious, because when I just think of like the atmosphere that Pulse has is so similar to this, except like even more so. And that one definitely does have supernatural. This one I kind of like. It's like either you believe that there was some sort of form of hypnosis that could be this powerful, or you believe that there's something supernatural tied to it.
Right.
And they do make up, like I said, they make a point when he first suggests hypnosis. What's his name? Says to him why that probably couldn't work. He says, you can't make people go directly against their nature. If they think killing is wrong, they won't do it. I guess so, then. I mean, if that is the connection, deaths, and I don't know, and that's pretty weak. And they probably didn't need it. I'm not saying it hurts the movie or anything like that, but I mean, it seems kind of weak. I don't know. Usually, it feels like if you're going to use like a literary device or a literary illusion, it has to be more present, or I don't know. I don't need it all to be big and obvious. I don't know. As I said, what I like about the movie is how vague a lot of this stuff is and open-ended. So I don't know. It doesn't mean there aren't things I don't maybe have some problems with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird, it feels uneven that most of the movie is so slowly paced and full of long lingering shots, which I really like. And then there is some just really fast editing and quick cuts. And I'm not even sure what they're trying to get across in a lot of them. They're confusing. And I still don't know who that woman with the Spanish tape was. I mean, it's so fast that you don't even remember it. But I promise you, it's in there. There's a woman sitting at a table listening to a Spanish tape. I don't know if it's supposed to be his wife or not. If it's supposed to be his wife, her hair looks a lot different.
I may not have even noticed that it was Spanish, honestly.
It was definitely Spanish. I mean, I don't speak Spanish, but I know it when I hear it. Unless it was Portuguese, because I mean, Spanish and Portuguese sound a lot alike. I would say it's more likely it was Spanish.
Yeah, it does make you wonder why that's in there.
It makes sense if it was his wife, but if it was his wife, it was a part of their house that hadn't been seen before, and her hair was tied back. Because it does happen before she's committed. So it is possible that's a scene of her at home, which at least makes some narrative sense, especially since I think he does flash back to it, even though that scene he's not present for. That's the other thing that weirds me out. Like, after he leaves Mayuma's house, he has a few really quick flashes, including what he just saw, like the animals in the cages. But that's one of them. I'm thinking he wasn't even there. So I don't know. Stuff like that is really confusing.
But he's putting those images in his head, right? I mean, Mayuma.
Yeah, Mayuma's definitely put images in his head. I mean, it's confirmed with the whole vision of his wife's suicide thing, right? Because, I mean, that's one thing the movie actually does tell us. Like, he has these visions of her suicide, and you can think, oh, was that implanted, or is he just, like, going nuts on his own? We find out he was definitely implanted because he brings it up. He says, you saw your wife dead, didn't you? Yeah. So
right.
That's pretty much an admission that he had, that he'd planted that, suggested it, or like that. Can't get too much information on the making of the movie, but this is a big favorite of Bong Joon-ho, by the way, Korean director. He considers this one of the greatest movies of all time, and obviously I would assume took a bit of inspiration for his own work. Makes sense. Bong Joon-ho likes trippy stuff.
Yeah, Scorsese's psychological as well.
Yeah,
Scorsese said it was really terrifying or something like that.
Because, yeah, actually, speaking of Bong Joon-ho, like, Memories of Murder is, a true crime movie. It's about real case and everything, and it's real world. But it does have kind of a similar vibe to this movie. It's very mundane. It's grimy. It's very uncinematic. So I could definitely see it in that movie for sure. Memories of Murder.
That's a good one.
Parasite again. I haven't watched Parasite in a while. I mean, I hate to be predictable, but that's a movie I can watch over and over again. I've seen
it since the theater, honestly.
Really? Wow. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times. I am lucky that I did see. I almost didn't see it at the theater, and I'm so glad that I actually did.
Well, it didn't get released here until it won the Oscar, and then it got a wide release, and I was able to watch it.
It got released here before that, but it was weird because that's how fast the buzz was. Because when I saw it, there literally was nothing. It was like what I think it was like late November, and like I had seen previews for it, and I thought it looked cool, and I was just going to go on the premise that it looked cool, and I like to see foreign cinema if I could. It wasn't. Oh, I love Bong Joon-ho. I mean, Bong Joon-ho, I knew who he was, but I wasn't necessarily a massive fan or anything like that. And the other thing was, it was nice because I got to see it without any hype. Then it got all hyped up and stuff. And
did he do Mother?
Remember that weird?
Did Bong Joon-ho
do
Mother?
Which is one of our first episodes, if anybody's interested. You have to go way back, but if you go way back in our channel, Mother is one of the first episodes we did.
7 years ago.
Yeah. We don't mean to mix up our Korean directors, but I know sometimes we've gotten who did what crossed with Park Chan-wook. But But Bong Joon-ho, the host, Mother, Snowpiercer, Parasite, that's him. And Memories of Murder, like I said, that's him. Park Chan-wook. It's like well, the Vengeance trilogy, but also D.C. Stoker. Is that him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Part.
But yeah, we were supposed to do Stoker a long time ago, and I couldn't find it anywhere.
I can't find the damn thing. We wanted to do that, and what's the other movie that it is similar to?
Well, and that's the thing. We did do the other one. We did the Hitchcock one, but we wanted to do them back to back, and we couldn't. But the Hitchcock one is Shadow of a Doubt. So again, if you're interested, it's a classic Hitchcock and one of my favorite Hitchcock movies that doesn't get a lot talked about. It gets overshadowed by some of the bigger ones. I love that movie, but the original plan was to do those back to back because Stoker obviously has a very similar plot.
I would like to do that at some point. I'd like to watch Stoker again.
Yeah, I like Stoker. How come Matthew Good's not more stuff? He's such a good actor. He's really interesting in that. Now that I'm thinking about killers and stuff, and I mean, they're the most overplayed thing in movies and TV is like some sort of, fascinating psychopath or serial killer. It's overdone to death, but there are good ones, obviously. They're ones that get talked about to death and too much, and it doesn't mean they're not good. Like, I like Hannibal Lecter, yes, I like Hannibal Lecter, but how much more can we talk about Hannibal Lecter and things like that? So that's why I like something like Stoker, where it's a little more off the board, an interesting type of character to talk about. He doesn't even get that much screen time, and yet he's so captivating. But that's one of the things that makes Mayama so interesting in this movie, too. Like, he's deliberately not menacing, right? He's like a skinny guy, which they overplay by giving him like overly baggy clothes. He's in no way physically imposing. And he has basically kind of no personality. And he has this whole shtick of having short-term memory. So all his scenes at first are very frustrating and confusing. He's just talking in circles with people. He keeps asking them questions. He can't answer any of their questions, and so forth. We do see his personality gets pulled back a little when he finally meets Takabe, because he finds Takabe so fascinating. And I mean, there's a scene. I have to change my mind on this because I think the first time I saw the movie, I probably thought when he's got him in custody and he's in jail and he's talking to him. Remember, Takabe completely loses his composure, right? Breaks down, flips out, talks about how his wife's a burden, how this guy's driving him crazy, and his head's going to split open, all this stuff. I remember the first time I thought that was kind of unrealistic. I was like, and he even says, like, I'm a cop. I'm supposed to be able to hide my emotions. I'm like, then what are you doing? You're doing like the exact opposite.
Doing a terrible job
now. But I get now the whole point is like it's part of the influence that Mayama has on him, that he wouldn't do this under normal circumstances, even if it was another killer. The whole point is, even if he's not programming him completely, he's getting him little by little. Yeah, I never bought that he was immune. I always thought that Mayama had a bigger scope plan in place for him, and that he basically did implement it. Although I don't think he did intend to die. I don't think he was too disappointed when he died either. He was smiling before the end. So like, again, this is somebody that had given up their personality to carry this work on. So that was really what mattered more to him than having his own identity. He sort of admits that he can remember having a life before and being somebody, but he doesn't mind that that's gone now, that now he's something else. All that shtick about, maybe serving a higher purpose, whatever like that.
Right.
It's a fast info dump right towards the end to get that stuff, because we spend most of the movie not knowing any of this. And then it's really quick. The whole thing about finding the tape about these mystics, or you want to call them, that mess around with mesmerism. Speaking of Mesmer, like, I always knew who he was. He was interesting to me because he was actually like, he lived in Austria at the same time as like Mozart. He was actually like friends with Mozart, which I think is kind of funny. But they made a movie in 1994 about Mesmer with Alan Rickman as him. Huh. That sounds pretty cool. So yeah, one thing this movie made me do is look up some stuff about Mesmer, because I knew the name. People talk about mesmerism. I vaguely knew he was the one that brought up the whole animal magnetism thing, which nowadays seems to have a very different definition. But he was talking sort of about like forces inside you, stuff that can't really be explained, and it's hard to pontificate on that, because I don't have a background in those sorts of social sciences. But it really is fascinating stuff, because this is like an 18th century guy. We're going way back here with Mesmer. but he had some books and things on him in the apartment. Another sort of interesting comparison to Seven is like in Seven, Mills and Somerset bust into John Doe's apartment while he's away, and the apartment is the stuff of nightmares, right? It's like crazy serial killer apartment. Not even the floor plan is nuts, which he didn't even make. Like it's just like twisty turny. You don't know where a door is going to be. It's so dark, and he's got the place full of journals. But then he's got the bed with the weird like upside down cross and shit on it. Like, you know, this guy is sinister too, kind of in a less showy way. I really do like the scene where Takabe goes in and starts looking through his stuff, and that weird, I don't know what it is, like sculpture thing around like the shower. It's very sinister. And it's something that the psychologist perhaps hallucinates at some point. Like he sees it, but he shouldn't be able to see it, right? Like my memory is a little mixed up here, but I'm pretty sure like he has a vision of it. But he was never actually at that apartment. So how would he know? So I think he's having like a vision of it or something.
Sakuma wasn't ever there? He wasn't with him?
Did he come back later? He wasn't with him the first time. Like at the
Okay.
first time he goes alone. Maybe Sakuma does go. I think I
was
remember
thinking
having
he was
watched it
with
so
him,
recently.
He
He wasn't with him the first time, but maybe he did go with him later. It would make sense to like to look at the books and stuff. Like he'd be able to make better sense. But he's not there the first time. But yeah,
Huh.
Sakuma's interesting too, because Sakuma's the most self-aware. Like he catches on very quickly, even though at first he's like quick to discredit, saying, you know, hypnosis doesn't work that way. Somebody can't do that. But then
Right.
he has to accept that Mayama has to be doing something. And so he's saying, like, don't talk to this guy, it's dangerous. And then you wonder, is he resistant in that even though he killed himself, like, was that a form of resistance? Like, was he supposed to be like the others programmed to like kill the next person he saw or whatever, and instead killed himself? Because it said he chained himself to something, right?
Yeah.
He like handcuffed or chained himself. So I always
Handcuffed,
thought that
yeah.
was like he could almost feel it. He was almost aware of it coming over him. So he like tried to stop himself and then had no choice but to kill himself.
Yeah, he was obviously having problems. You know, he was seeing things because, you know, he had the big X painted on the
Yeah.
wall that he tries to get rid of when he
Right. And he
realizes
hallucinates Takabe coming after him. Yeah. But I think what they're trying to show is because he's more aware than anybody else, he actually is able to fight it a little,
that-
which is why he winds up killing himself and not someone else. That's what I figure anyway. That's why, like, it's kind of suggestible that, like, all the other people that committed murder, like, we don't know nothing about the first guy. The only one that really is weird is the guy with his wife, because he did love his wife. Like, they're interrogating him before they understand what's going on. They're trying to get out of him. You know, you hated your wife. You had resentment against your wife. He
Right.
didn't. He didn't at all. But so it is a little confusing. It's like he did go against his nature. Like he did kill his wife, even though it was against his nature. Whereas with the cop, it's like, yeah, the cop's not a killer. He wouldn't normally kill anybody. But it was true. He did have real feelings of resentment against his partner or whatever like that. And then with the programming, he combined it and said, well, I hated my partner, so that's why I did it. You know. But it's different with the husband and wife, the teacher, because he's just like, I loved my wife. Why did I? And, you know, he totally breaks down. And as for the first guy, we don't know anything about him. He picked up a prostitute and killed her.
Mm-hmm.
It's as nondescript as these things get. And what's interesting there, too, is in that scene, we see him getting the pipe. That's the first thing we see. We see him in the same sort of tunnel that we see Takabe in later. He, like, pulls the piece of pipe off the wall. In fact, I think now that I think about it, is that what Takabe is looking at? Remember there's a part where there's pipe with water coming out of it? I think he's looking at the piece of pipe that got pulled off by the first killer. That must be it, now that I think about it.
Okay.
That's why it's significant, and that's why water's coming out, because that guy pulled it off.
Right.
So I think at least that makes a certain amount of sense. It is tying back to something that happened earlier. There's still some quick cuts and things in the movie that I don't get, especially the whole, I'm going to watch the scene again with the woman with the Spanish tape, because if it's his wife, that at least makes sense. But I swear it's like a woman I never saw anywhere else in the movie. But maybe I'm just really bad at recognizing people because it's from a distance away. It's like a far shot. She's like in a room, like we're in a room, like I don't know, pretty far away. She's like probably maybe 50 feet from the camera. So that's enough to make me doubt my senses or who she is, my recognition. But one thing I interrupted myself on was that Mamiya I was saying, he's not a physical guy. The whole thing is up here, but he does break out of prison by physically murdering a guard. I feel like that was just a part of the script where they didn't know what else to do. Like they had to get him out, but they didn't know how to get him out. They're like, well, I guess he can kill somebody. I guess it doesn't ruin it if he kills somebody. Because they wanted a final confrontation between him and Takabe, and so they needed him to be free to do that. I don't know. You'd think that maybe he could have talked to a guard or somebody and gotten them to kill somebody that would get him out, but he does it himself.
Right.
It's interesting too, how seriously do you take this guy? He hasn't, as far as we know, killed anybody, so it's not too strange to put him in a room with stuff like that. Because you think, oh, if this is a serial killer, he's killed a bunch of people. Yeah, maybe you don't put him in a room where he has a hard wooden bench or a stool that he could clobber you with. But this is a guy that hasn't touched or hurt anybody, so maybe that's why. Again, there's suspension of disbelief there because this whole facility he's in, what the fuck is it? It's not realistic, right? It's like the 50s in here. It's like he's in some sort of 50s sanitarium. I don't understand what that place is. And when they're having their conversation, you can hear literally screaming down the halls and stuff.
Yeah.
It's what is this? It's like a fucking madhouse is what it is. That probably would not exist in late 20th century Japan, but the movie, again, is what it is. It's set in this kind of darker, more dingy, decrepit world. So you buy it. But he gets out kind of easily. It's not even on the screen. So what it is. So, it shows him bashing the thing apart. So we're supposed to believe logically the guard showed up and was like, hey, what's all this noise? And he bashed the guard and ran away. I assume that's the only thing I can make sense of. I assume that's what happened.
Yeah, I don't know what smashing the radiator. I don't know how that would help you, escape. But
well, I can figure, like I said, is he made enough noise that the guard came in. It's like, hey, stop that. And then he used what was left of the stool to clobber the guard and then left because all he had to do was hit one guard to escape this place. Because, I feel like, that was almost like they had run into a wall and they're like, whatever, we'll just write it that he escapes.
Yeah, doesn't really matter.
And it's weird, too, what he says to Takabe because he says, you let me escape. Because he's almost trying to make him feel guilty. And he says, because you wanted me to, so we could blah, blah. And then he stops him. He does a shut up Hannibal, whatever you want to call it, by shooting him and ending his monologue right there, which I do love.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is this victory? Did the good guy just win? Not really.
Yeah, I was trying to think. If there was anything else I wanted to mention about it. It's a really interesting movie. You really brought up a lot of things I didn't think about when I was watching it.
Well, as somebody who tries to watch movies carefully and analyze them, this is a movie that there's so much I'm not sure of. There's a lot that I'm not sure of. And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing about the movie. Because there's a type of movie where you're just deliberately vague and it's just unsatisfying. You're just like, what the hell? Are you trying to tell a story? This movie isn't like that. It's not so vague that it's just what are you doing? It's just ambiguous enough about certain points that you can wonder. As I said, you really wonder about the nature of Mayuma's power, how far it goes, how it affects different people, why they would do things like that. As I said, it never occurred to me that Takabe, as I've read in some places, that Takabe was immune. I always thought he wasn't trying to do that stuff with Takabe, that he recognized something special in him and wanted to turn him into himself, which is what is accomplished in the end. Because it seems pretty clear to me he could do stuff. He got Takabe to break down emotionally, and he also managed to implant that whole vision of seeing his wife kill herself. So it seems that he's not immune. He's just trying different things with him. So stuff like that. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there. And again, is this an isolated thing where he at the university or whatever stumbled across the tape, or was this an ongoing thing for 100 years? Has there been a whole line of people following in those footsteps and passing it on, and he was just the latest person to have it passed on to? Because either somebody did it to him, or he stumbled upon it, and it took him over.
But maybe it's both. Maybe he stumbled upon it and it's been something that's been going on for a while because, like you said, he listens to the phonograph.
Yeah.
And
I always thought that's what completed it for Takabe. Yeah. That's what I thought. I thought he was probed here and there. Various stuff was implanted in him by Mayuma, but it was the final thing was listening to that phonograph. That sort of switched him over.
Well, I mean, maybe it can't
there's
happen
no way to
until
know that for sure.
until he's dead. Also, maybe it can't happen until the original
Maybe there can't be
dead.
more than one. Maybe there can't be more than one at a time.
They're like Highlanders.
Like Highlanders are going to be only one. But yeah, I mean that's one of the things that makes it so interesting. Mayama is an interesting character, but most of what makes him interesting is how he's kind of a blank slate. And what we really wind up finding out is this is not the typical movie about some sort of unique and weird and I don't know what's the word I'm trying to look for. all my words are leaving me, but but you know what I mean, those sorts of serial killers that we just love to see in movies and TV. You know, they always have something that's really what is the word, man?
Well, they're
what has happened
much
to
more romanticized in movies than in real life. Like in real life, serial killers that actually are able to do it for a while and get away with it for a while are generally pretty boring people. Like
and most of them are lucky, right? They're getting by luck. It's not there's some genius like Hannibal Lecter who's always a step ahead of the cops or something like that. A lot of them, yeah, they get by just by simple luck and things like that. Or
I mean, I think a lot of people probably get caught before they can actually reach that status. You know, they fuck up some way, but you've got these boring guys that have some sort of weird office job and they have a wife and kids, and they look normal on the outside, but they're out there murdering prostitutes on the weekends.
But yeah, I mean, for a long time, it's been a staple of fiction to have sort of again, I can't think of the word I want to say when I'm trying to describe a serial killer, but you know what I mean? Like somebody who's memorable, somebody who, even outside of the fact that they're a killer, there's something really memorable and engaging about them, because that's what we like. We like those sorts of serial killers. They're not bland or boring or ordinary. Right. And the whole thing about Mayama is that he's not that. He's basically sort of a blank slate.
Yeah.
And this is really about, I don't know if you want to call it a program or what, but it's, the whole point is it's almost like a program and it gets passed along. You lose your identity to it, is really what it is. So it's not really about any specific personality. Like that's what it is with mostly serial killers. It's all about their strange, weird, kooky personality that draws the audience in, something that makes them seem so different. But in this, it's not like that. Mayama's a blank slate with a certain amount of self-awareness. And he's goal-oriented, but, he's no Hannibal Lecter, that's for sure. And that's what I like. And in the end, the way it ends is the hero or the protagonist of the movie kind of becomes him. Now he's him. That is very unique. Like, I can't really think of another movie that does that. Like, I've seen, like, maybe the idea of a curse being passed on and something more supernatural. But the whole point of this movie is, like, yeah, you could say it's supernatural, but there's enough science and stuff in there to make it almost plausible that it's something that could actually happen. Maybe there is a level of hypnotism that could work in the right, it's like maybe like hypnotism works to a certain degree. We know that it is proven that you can hypnotize people to achieve certain effects. So maybe there is another level. Maybe it's something we haven't unlocked. Maybe it could be unlocked. That hypnotism could, be much more effective and powerful to the point, like what we've seen in fiction, where you could like hypnotize people to go off and kill people and stuff like that. Somebody here earlier in the comments had mentioned something like the MK Ultra stuff, like using drugs and stuff to try to program people. I mean, there is some basis in reality about that kind of stuff. Manchurian Candidate, all that. I know that's not reality, but I'm just saying, again, that's a movie, Manchurian Candidate, that's not real, but it has like enough of a foothold in reality where you're like, yeah, maybe that's possible. Maybe that is something that could happen or even has happened. It was covered up, and that's something that's interesting about this movie.
What do you call it when they're, someone's hypnotized and they say a word and that's when they turn into, the killer, they kill somebody or something. It used to be used in movies a lot, like in the 70s and 60s.
You mean like a
Or you're-
sleeper agent kind of thing?
Yeah, sleeper agent. That's the word I was trying to think
Yeah,
of.
the idea of a sleeper agent, right? And that's like in the they do in the MK Ultra movie, right, with Jesse Eisenberg. The whole idea was he's a sleeper agent. They programmed him with all this stuff. They trained him with all this stuff, but he doesn't remember any of it. And he's just living a life. But then some sort of trigger word, I can't even remember what happens in the movie, but the idea is like there's some sort of like trigger word or something that activates him.
Right.
You know, they do that a bit in the Marvel comics. They did later in the movies too, like with the Winter Soldier. The idea is like he's brain now. See, that's something I want to say. Like we as kids, we grew up, we knew what brainwashing was. We watched cartoons and stuff like that. But that was a much less realistic version of brainwashing. Today, brainwashing exists. Like, for instance, let's say some fucking cult takes you in and they use their brainwashing techniques, the real life kind. You know, they deprive you of sleep, they yell all this stuff at you, they don't let you eat and all this. You know, they put you through this for a long time, and then they put a gun in your hand and send you out to kill somebody. That makes an interesting court case, because what can you prove? How liable is this person? How responsible is this person? This is a person, we'll say, doesn't have any mental health issues before this. They were, never had anything. But now they committed a murder and they were brainwashed to do it. And, what is the push and pull there between the prosecution and the defense about how responsible this person was, how effective brainwashing is? And they might say, oh, well, they were brainwashed. They were made to do this. All this stuff happened to them. But then somebody else could argue kind of the hypnosis thing. It's like, no matter how much you push somebody, they can't go against their nature. You can't make them kill somebody if they don't really want to do it, so, and there's not really any actual answer to that. Exactly. It's all sort of about what you can convince a jury of, I suppose.
Well, they put Charles Manson in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah, because of they could prove that he incited people to murder people. That wasn't even necessarily hypnotism or anything. It was just he told people to do it and they wanted to do it, right? Like, I've never really thought of the Manson family as being programmed or brainwashed. I think they were fucked up, vulnerable people that would do what he told them to do because they wanted to do it. I've never thought that he was more responsible. I thought, yeah, he's the catalyst, but I've never thought of any of the Manson family people as like, oh, they were brainwashed, so like give them a light sentence or something like that.
Well, I mean, you still have free will. You
still exactly.
If I tell you to go kill someone and you do it, that's on you, not on me. But not in that case, because I don't think
Charles in the Manson case,
he didn't have any murders for himself, right? Like there was no murders that he actually committed that they know.
Oh no, he did. In fact, right after the Tate one, he did, because he was angry and wanted to. But he killed somebody before that too. He killed at least 2 people in different. Events.
Is that's proven though?
I mean, he said.
Is that what he was convicted for? He was actually convicted for first-degree murder.
I don't know if he was convicted of those. You're right. Like the main thing he was convicted on was inciting murder. I don't know if he has murder convictions against him or not, but it's pretty much accepted as fact that he killed at least 2 people. In fact, and like definitely pretty much at least admitted, I think, to like killing somebody right after the Tate thing, because he was annoyed about how they fucked up the Tate thing and said he would have to show them how to do it properly. Like he thought like, I can't trust you guys to go out without me. I have to do it, And so the second one, the Bianca one or whatever it was, he was present for and actually did kill at least one person himself. But yeah, in the case of that though, like, I mean, yeah, I get it. We were talking about cults, but I mean, his cult was different. His was much more of a cult of personality. He didn't have like the facilities or anything. Like, again, he was obviously a special person in that people listened to him and did what he wanted. Now, most people weren't going to kill for him, but even the people that wouldn't kill for him would still do other things for him, right? Like he talked his way into everything. He was friends with fucking Dennis Wilson, things like that, right? He was just some idiot barefoot, but he was a likable guy in many ways. The main thing was like he was able to get women to do what he wanted. And the main way he controlled men was he's like, hey, I've got all these sexy sluts and, they'll fuck you. That was like his main control over that sort of thing, is he provided girls to men with power that he wanted to get to. So, yeah. But I mean, as far as that goes, I don't think any of those girls were brainwashed. Sure, they were doing drugs and stuff like that, but I've never thought of them as being brainwashed. I just thought they got caught up because they were idiots. Whereas I do have sympathy for somebody that was maybe in like some sort of cult. And we're talking about like a more organized cult. They've got like a big grounds and facilities and stuff, and they lock you in a basement and do all that stuff to you, and then they send you out. Like, for instance, okay, here's a good real life example. It's not even a cult, but it's about how responsible you think somebody is for their actions. And this doesn't even require brainwashing necessarily, although it depends on how you use it. So in 1988, 2 North Korean terrorists put a bomb on a flight, and they succeeded. It blew up and killed everybody on board. It was just before the Olympics in Seoul. The point of it was a terrorist action, but it wasn't just a terrorist action. They were agents. They were North American. They were North Korean agents. That was their mission. It was part of it was to make South Koreans, who were were on this flight. It was a flight somewhere to the Middle East. It was to make them afraid to travel, because it was right before the Seoul Olympics. They were caught. It was an older man, a middle-aged man, and a very young woman, and they were both well-trained spies. And most of their training is not the kind of spy training you see in movies. The whole point was it was to blend in as other people. I think they were posing as Japanese people, right? So her training was, she was only like 24, 25, but her whole training was, you're going to walk and talk and learn everything to be a Japanese person. And he's going to be your, I don't know if it was husband or father or what, but anyway, they eventually did get caught actually pretty quick after. The guy, being a total secret agent, had cyanide, bit down on it, died. But they caught her alive. So she had participated in the bombing of a flight that killed, I think, like close to 100 people. And in the end, she was personally pardoned by the South Korean president. He said that she was brainwashed by the regime, she didn't have any choice, and that she was a victim too. And to this day, she has a new identity, and she lives in seclusion somewhere and has lived a life with a family and everything like that. And obviously that's not going to sit right with a lot of people. But I do understand the argument, because she didn't have any choice. You grow up in North Korea, you're pulled out of school as a teenager by the government and says, you're special. We have special plans for you. And you're trained, and you're told about these enemies that you have to fight, and you do all this. Like, there was never any choice for her to not do it, right? So she's responsible, but how responsible is she given her situation? Not doing it was never an option. What could she have done? If she tried to run, there was nowhere to go. Hell, if she tried to run, there's a good chance the older agent might have just killed her himself, right? So people are going to have different opinions upon whether or not she deserved to be pardoned and go on and live an ordinary life and not go to jail or anything like that. But I do kind of get what the president, who made that decision himself, this wasn't decided by the courts. This, she wasn't tried in a court. The president stepped in himself and pardoned her with that. So that's not brainwashing per se, but it is still technically brainwashing, right? She never had any alternative. You grow up in North Korea, you don't have any other alternative except to believe everything the government tells you. And you certainly can't go against it. So I don't know. She's appeared in public in certain ways, and obviously I think she wrote a book and donated money to the families of people and stuff like that. Like, she is very remorseful. And remember, she was really young when she did it and all this stuff. So I don't know. But I mean, to me, I believe that's a different kind of brainwashing, but it comes down to the same thing. Like, yeah, she knew what her actions were, but what choice did she have? I'll look up what flight that was. Is it Vietnam Flight 1? No, that's not it. Wow, that's a separate airplane bombing from 1988. What one's that? Pan Am. No, this wasn't Pan Am. Oh, this had to do with the Libyan civil war. No, this is different. That's not good when there's more than one 1988 air bombing. It was a Korean Air Flight 858. I believe this is it. Yes. This is Korean Air Flight 858. Oh, I said 88, so it wasn't quite 88. Like I said, this is before the Olympics in 88, so that would have been February 88. So this is November 29th, 1987. So that's why I didn't find it right away. Yeah, oh shit, yeah. So 115 fatalities. 104 passengers plus crew. So a lot of people dead. Obviously, the woman, what was her name? By the way, it was supposedly Kim Jong-il who ordered this. We all remember him. He would have been. He's the father of the present dictator Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-il was not dictator at that time. Yeah, I think it was Kim Jong-su who was. But yeah, apparently Kim Jong-il was the architect of this. Anyway, let's see what's his. Yeah, her name was Kim Hyun-hoi. I am guilty of a heinous crime. How do I dare to think of marriage? This is because she did get married. Being a culprit, I do have a sense of agony with which I must fight. In that sense, I must still be a prisoner or a captive of a sense of guilt. But yeah, there's a book called The Tears of My Soul that talks about how she was trained as an agent and all this stuff to carry out the bombing. But yeah, it was stuff like that. I mean, she wasn't exactly brainwashed. She sort of had free will, but you have free will that only goes so far when you're a North Korean agent. You can decide things, but that doesn't mean you can do them. So I always think, I guess that's less about how culpable people are when they're brainwashed than, I don't know. But it's just something I think about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That the president was that moved that he decided to pardon her for it, because it would have been the easiest thing in the world to have her executed.
Mm-hmm.
And he chose a more compassionate route. I think I think her age had something to do with it. She was pretty damn young. She was in, like I said, I think her mid 20s when it happened. I mean, as far as I know about her life, as I said, you grew up in North Korea. She was literally pulled out of high school and sent to like a special school to become an agent. And that was just what her life was all about. In the meantime, being fed all the propaganda and lies of that regime and told that she had to do this thing. So yeah, but it's funny because like when I think about like brainwashing, usually I think of the non-realistic kind, and you think how you would apply that in the real world. I think it's funny. Like again, speaking of like Marvel and like the Winter Soldier, it's kind of funny. So like even if we just go to the MCU, we'll take comics out of the equation. Like if you remember like a movie like Winter Soldier, because the whole point is there's a bunch of like Hydra agents, right? They find out there's a bunch of Hydra agents that have gotten inside of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? And then, all this crazy stuff happens, right? Like, the aftermath of that in real life would be bonkers. Because think about it. Think about, like, the aftermath of World War II, and they did the trials, what were the Nuremberg trials, right? And the whole thing with those Nazi war criminals, they all had the same excuse. Following orders, it wasn't my idea. It was somebody else passing the blame all around, right? Imagine that with, like, Hydra sleeper agents inside S.H.I.E.L.D. How the fuck could you prosecute anybody? They'd be like, brainwashing right here. I was brainwashed. They used their secret Hydra voodoo on me. I didn't mean to do any of the war crimes or terrorism that I did. Brainwashed, Like, so in the movies, they just sort of sweep that under the rug. It's like, we got all those Hydra agents. We took care of it. But in real life, the aftermath would be like years and years and years of trying to sort this out and figure out what to do with the people they caught, how they could hold any of them accountable. Because they'd be like, no, Hydra has real brainwashing. Not like the brainwashing you hear about, like real brainwashing. Like your free will is gone and you have to do it, They could all claim that. And it would be so hard to prove or disprove. So yeah, I like how this movie is. It's a more realistic approach, but it always makes you wonder how close we are to that kind of brainwashing existing. The idea you could be hypnotized and you lose your own personality to it. Like it's bad enough in the instances of just like where they kill somebody. It seems to suggest that in those ones, like their personality does eventually reemerge after it. I mean, it seemed to happen right away with the husband who killed his wife, right? Like he's just like, why did I kill her? And he's breaking down. It's like he's become himself again, and now he has to live in the aftermath. But then there's like an even deeper kind that did something like what it did to Takabe, which seems to suggest that Takabe has now become what Mayama was, and he's gonna like sort of carry on the work of this crazy chaos. Yeah, so I don't know. It's interesting to think about. Like, is there something in the real world close to that? Is it a lot? Are we a lot closer to that than we realize? Has something like this, even remotely like this, happened? Like maybe, I don't know. Again, it's a hard type of thing to prove one way or another. And the whole other angle you movie is think, oh, maybe there is a supernatural element to it. Maybe they're trying to suggest that there's something more special about somebody like Mayama, and that's why he's able to hypnotize people in such an effective way and get them to do things that supposedly nobody should be able to make you do even under hypnosis. So it's just another part of how the movie is vague, but that's a cool thing. What's it called? Maybe magic, maybe mundane. You know, the pull he has over people and his ability to get a read on their thoughts, you know, it seems to go beyond anything that you could explain scientifically. So, movie, take a little grain of salt, you know, a bit of a.
Yeah, I mean, I like that you don't really have a definitive answer, but it would make you think that there's a little something more to it. Only because he does it so easily, you know.
Yeah, exactly, right. And again, that is sort of hinted at the start in the very first conversation that Takabe has with the other guy, whose name I keep forgetting. Something S.
I mean, isn't a big proponent of hypnotism? Like, don't you have to actually want to be hypnotized? Like, you know, you can't just
because like, you usually have to be. You have to be. Yeah, you like. I think in most things, like anybody being hypnotized, like they're following instructions and they're allowing themselves, you know, to be put under or go under.
It's not like I could just wave this watch, you know, and then, you know, everyone in the room is going to become hypnotized. You know, it's like
yeah, right. But that's what Mayama is capable of doing. He's capable of hypnotizing you in such a way that you have no idea it's happening.
Right.
And I like how they do it. It's like an interesting method. He just sort of repeats some things, shows you some things. And the best way to get somebody's, and I think maybe to get somebody's mind in the right place, it seems, is like this whole shtick about not being able to remember anything. Because it's like anytime they try to stray off and ask him questions, he doesn't have an answer. He doesn't remember, whatever. Stuff like that. You have that great scene where they take him into like before all those officials and he just drives them nuts, right? One of them wants to like punch him out. Takabe actually like kicks his chair into the wall or something, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's a very deep movie. I mean, it really gets you thinking about a lot of different topics.
But yeah, what's implied there again, I think, is that it does wear down whatever natural defenses you have. Is this whole ruse he's doing about the fugue state and the short-term memory loss or like that? I figure that's like part of his method. It somehow helps him accomplish what he's trying to. Just like speaking of like having a personality, like how much is his personality is the other thing. Like he seems genuinely amused by the pain he can cause people in Takabe. He likes that he can get a rise out of him, but I don't know how much of that is really him or programming. And also, like, does he believe the stuff he says to the doctor, or does he just know what the right thing is to say to her? Because remember, he says some very sexist, misogynist things to her about her being just a woman and a woman being a lower form of life than man. Like, I don't think he necessarily believes that. I think it's just part of, like, he understands her vulnerability. He's somehow able to understand that in her quest to, in her journey becoming a doctor, she faced a lot of sexism. And I think that's how. Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily something he believes. It's just something he found in her and hit on it. and made her more susceptible.
Well, that's like, the way he hypnotizes people too. I think, kind of delves into their life a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he asks them questions about themselves.
Right.
He wants to know so he can find some vulnerability that he can seize on. But as you said, most of those scenes it cuts off before we really get going. Her, we get to see the full thing, more or less, as far as I know. And it is very interesting, especially the first time you watch the movie, because he's up to something, but you still don't really know what he can do or what he's doing. And then you just see like him talk to her like that, and she's not answering the way a normal person was, and you're like, something's going on.
Yeah.
Because he says something like, you're the one who wants out. And then later she's like, what did you mean by that? And they come back around.
What's up, Mikey? Jess? Orc?
Oh, Orc too. What's up?
But yeah, I mean, I guess we can kind of wrap it up here. It's I think we've kind of touched on a good bit.
Yeah, I'm just trying to test out some more stuff about Kurosawa, who I think is a very interesting filmmaker. Took us a long time. Took us a long time to get to him because I mean we were both aware of him for quite some time. He's one of that wave of Japanese that was very influenced by American film. It's pretty interesting. He mentions an admiration for Tobe Hooper, which I think is interesting. Sam Peckinpah, I get that. I mean, he does a lot of genres, which is something that's really cool about him. He's done quite a few sort of serious dramas. He's known as a horror guy, but that's mostly just for Cure and Pulse. Like, I'm not saying he didn't do anything else like that, but a lot of his stuff is just is quite different.
Yeah,
Sweet Home is so many horror too, but Sweet Home is completely
films I haven't
horror.
Seen. Yeah,
and Sweet Home is a lot like an Evil Dead type movie. Is what it's like.
I want to see that for sure. I may watch that.
One thing that's interesting, I'm always interested in movies that didn't happen. He was going to do a movie called 1905. It was going to have Tony Leung in it. It got canceled, but it would have been interesting because it was a Chinese movie that he was going to direct, but it didn't come together for whatever reason. Let's see. Canceled before difficulties with Tony Leung's involvement exacerbated by the Senkaku Islands dispute and the banker. Oh, the Senkaku Islands dispute. I remember that. I mean, I don't remember that, but I mean, I know it. I know what that is. Just very quickly, that's another one of many sources of tension between Japan and China. We'll say, you know how it is with islands. What it always is. We own the islands. No, we own the islands. Japan has that one, a stronger one of those. I can't remember which islands with that going on with Russia too. They've been arguing over the same islands since like World War II. But that's funny that actually played a role in this Japanese director not getting to helm this Chinese film. But then again, the Chinese film, it's not like they went ahead without him. They never made it. Anyway, it sounded interesting. Obviously, I like Tony Leung quite a bit. This being the more prominent Tony Leung that we talk about. There are two Tony Leungs, if people don't know. This would be Tony Leung Chiu-wai. He's the guy that we know from a lot of movies, including a certain amount of Western movies. Maybe most notably, recently, the Shang-Chi movie, where he's the Mandarin. There is another Tony Leung Ka-Fai, who is kind of the lesser Tony, although I think he's known as Big Tony, because they're known as Big Tony and Little Tony. He's known as Big Tony because he's taller, and I think he's older. Something like that. But anyway, that movie did not happen. It was just too bad. But it didn't slow down his production. That would have been 1905. That was supposed to be sometime around 2014. Anyway, it didn't happen. And since 2014, he's done quite a few movies. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've only seen Pulse and Cure. I've always had an interest in Sweet Home, but there's other stuff too. Like, I feel like I've seen Tokyo Sonata, but I haven't. I must have just
I thought I had as well. I don't think I had.
All I can think is like at some point maybe I was looking something up and I came across it on Wikipedia and like I read like it's a plot summary or something. Is maybe what happened. But that's supposed to be a pretty good drama. But yeah, I definitely want to see Pulse again because it's been quite a few years. But yeah, but in my long tenure of watching movies and particularly horror movies, that still holds the record for me as like bleakest movie. Like it has the bleakest feel, man. That movie like carved me out. Like I just remember watching that all alone in the dark and like it was scary, but not in like the normal scary way. It just, I just felt like so empty and lost. It was like, why would you seek that out? I don't know. Why do we?
Well, it's harder to do than the typical, jump scare type thing that we're used to,
I mean, the best type of horror is a horror that is enduring and lasts, not something where you're just anticipating something to scare you in a moment and it's over. It's really different. But yeah, I remember somebody saying something about one of the Resident Evil games that I thought was actually pretty good, and I didn't experience it because I don't like 7 and didn't get very far in 7. But you can see lists of like scariest moments in Resident Evil, and on most of them are like jump scares of some sort. They're good jump scares, but this guy pointed out like for him the scariest was like having to approach this door, which is true. Like there's a part when you're a certain amount into the game where you've done all you can do on this level, and the only place to go now is down these steps and through a door. And he talked about like just the dread he felt knowing like there wasn't anything else to do. He had to go through that door, and it was kind of scary once you get through, but I totally agree with that because I felt that sort of thing in some games, like where there's a part where I'm just worried about what's going to come, and I'm almost like looking for other alternatives. It's like can't put it off any longer. The door is the only thing you can do. So that was a pretty good point, and that's kind of how I feel about some of these movies. It's much more impressive to have like a pervading fear that lasts instead of like okay, this moment is safe and we're fine. Okay, now I'm anticipating something scary. Oh, jump scare came, I'm scared, and now we sort of recover from it, move on. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's much more impressive when you can sort of keep like an atmosphere of fear going almost the whole way. And Pulse is like that.
Is that the one where it's in like Louisiana or somewhere?
Yeah.
It's like the first person one.
It's the only one of the core series I haven't beaten because I did beat 8.
I had to give up on that one. That one.
It was too scary for me.
Yeah, me too.
It was stressing me out. What's funny is like the beginning, like the first like hour and a half of 8 is just as scary, but then once you get through that, like the first hour or so, it becomes a lot more like an action type game. Although 8 still has the scariest sequence I've ever encountered in a video game. Now, to be fair, there's lots of horror games that I just never played, and it's a different. I won't give anything away, but there's a section in 8 where it almost changes genres. It takes your weapons away and turns into something completely different. That entire thing. I mean, I'm lucky too, because 8, not just that sequence, because I got through that sequence without getting killed, but 8 is weird. So the first like hour or so of 8 is really hard just because you don't have any, you have almost like no ammo or anything. Like you're not equipped to deal with stuff. You mostly have to run and hide, right? You eventually get to a point in the castle where you start to get stuff and you can fight back. You still have to hide in places, but still. But anyway, but there's a part right before that. Like, so there's about an hour running around in the village, and then there's a part where you get to the castle, and suddenly you're confronted by all the bad guys. All the bad guys are there, and they could just kill you, and of course they don't. They drop you down into this area full of traps. When I got there, I got killed by the traps, I think 4 times in a row. I did, things were happening fast. I wasn't reacting quickly enough. I think 4 quick deaths. I got killed. And then finally on like the 5th try, I made it through the traps. After that, I never died for the rest of the game until the final boss. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't replayed it, because there was something magical about that run. Because it was weird, because it was very dramatic. It was almost like the way you would do a movie. Because, it's not very dramatic when you play a game and you die and you try again, you die, you try again, which goes, something I was magically touched. I never died. There were a bunch of close calls where I came so close to dying and just pulled myself out, including the scary sequence I'm telling you about, right? Because it is kind of anticlimactic to have that scary sequence where I won't give anything away, But then to die and then know what's coming and deal with it. I was reacting in real time to the whole thing the whole while.
Right.
And that's not something I can say I did in a lot of horror games, because usually I got killed at least a couple times, right? It's just something happens. But I was until the final boss, who I died many times against before I finally killed. But yeah, 7 is the only one I never played through and beaten. I don't know. I own it. I guess I could always fire it up and try it again. It always stresses me out. I find it really scary.
Yeah, it was stressful, I think, is the reason why I quit. That and like Alien Isolation was like that for me too.
I love Alien Isolation. I've beaten that multiple times because it's so enjoyable. That is one of the
It's a
best
great
horror
game,
games
but
around.
man, it's stressful.
Yeah, I recently I watched a guy like play it on like the ultra difficulty, where like, you know, any mistake kills you, right? And what was crazy was like, not only he had to beat it all the way in one shot. So I think it took him 3 months to do it. Like, it's a crazy video because it does show him dying, but then eventually, you know, it's edited so it would just bring him back. But every time he died, he started at the absolute beginning. And he died a bunch because, again,
So we had to start over.
Entirely over.
Wow.
The very beginning. Like, I don't know how anybody has that kind of patience. And he just did it to himself. He didn't have to. But yeah, there's like a nightmare difficulty level on it. This is impossible anyway. He did that, but he also made, if he died, which meant he could be like 90% through the game, one little mistake, he does the whole thing over again. I can't imagine that. And like that difficulty, I couldn't get anywhere on that difficulty, man. They take away all your like the resources that you already don't have too many of. Now you have like none.
Right.
And you have to really understand behavior, because it's like, oh, I should have gone right, paused for 10 seconds, then hid behind the table, then moved along the wall, staying on the wall, then waited another 10 seconds, then opened up the grate and gone in it, right? Like, it's do that or death. It's not do something else or make a few seconds. That's death. It's do it like that or you're dead, right? There's so many situations in the game like that once you're on a high enough difficulty, because they really amp up the aliens' AI. It's really interesting. You should watch some videos. There's some really interesting videos that explain how the aliens' AI works in that, because he's always roaming looking for you. He's never off the map. And then there's like, depending on the difficulty of the game, like what he'll respond to, what his radius is, you know, whether he'll pass by you and certain things. Because even on a low difficulty, one thing you find out really quickly is like, if you like are hiding in lockers to avoid the alien, it doesn't take too long for the alien to just understand that that's what you're doing and start to check lockers immediately, right? So in the highest difficulty, you get to do that maybe once. You get to fool it once in one way and then never for the rest of the game. Like, I don't know how he could do anything. Like, some of it's not even the alien, right? Sometimes you're getting killed by robots or humans. And again, you have to almost memorize their patterns, the way they walk around. You make one thing wrong, they're going to like shoot you and you're dead. On normal difficulty, you can maybe take a bullet or two. On this like nightmare difficulty, no. You get shot once, you're gone. You know, so this guy was crazy. I can't believe he did it. I think he died at least 32 times, which is way less than I would have died. And he started over every single time. So it's an interesting video. But yeah, that's a great game. It was stressful, but it seems like the type of game I wouldn't get through, but I did. I've beaten it multiple times, actually. I enjoy it so much. It's really good, too, as far as canon goes, right? Like, I like to think of it as actually fitting in the alien world. Like, Alien 3, as far as I'm concerned, never happened. But this is good. So there's a new Alien coming out in the summer, but I don't know anything about it.
Oh, really?
You know yeah, there's another Alien coming out in like August or something. Which weird, snuck up on me. You thought I would have heard something about it.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in that franchise.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, the last Alien Covenant, you know, I really wanted to like it, but the characters just made so many stupid decisions, and I don't know. What made me really sad, because I like Billy Crudup so much, and they made him like the dumbest of all. Billy Crudup was like the captain, and I like him. He's one of my favorite actors, and he's just such an idiot. It's like, stick your head in the leg, why don't you, Billy? Don't make him do that.
I think Ridley Scott's the problem there.
Yeah, I know. He's the producer of this movie, too. He's still always the producer. I mean, he's not the worst producer in the Alien series. I mean, I've often spoken. It's funny. Many times on this show, I've spoken about Walter Hill as a director. I really like Walter Hill's work in his career. But man, he was not helpful as a producer in the Alien franchise. He's one of the reasons. There's many reasons why Alien 3 sucks, but he's one of the major ones. He was a huge problem for that. Him and the other guy, I don't remember the other producer's name, but they were fucking terrible.
What was that on 3?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm like you. I don't have there's some people that they can salvage something to like about 3. I can't like anything. Because let's even say we'll take out the unforgivable story sin of just killing Newton Hicks, right? Okay, they're dead. Everything they did didn't matter. I hate the setting so much. I hate the characters so much. I think landing them on a prison planet with a bunch of bald convicts is so boring and so stupid. I can't stand it.
I watched it again. I watched the producer's cut or whatever the hell they call it, the unofficial director's cut. And I don't think it's much better.
Is it called the work print or something, maybe?
Whatever the hell it is. It's it's not an official David Fincher, didn't sign off on it, but it's a lot of the stuff that was cut out. And it doesn't make it much better, honestly. I'm done with it. I'll never watch it again.
I mean, it doesn't even matter. David Fincher did sign off on the original, and he still basically distanced himself from it completely. So he officially signed off on it, but if you ask him, he kind of disowns the movie anyway. So
well, you probably had
that movie had at least
to get a paycheck,
Oh yeah, that's what it wound up in the end. That's why so many people wound up leaving and stuff. There were at least 8 versions of the script, 8, which is pretty crazy, including a pretty good one that they got rid of, written by author William Gibson. I have the novel based on his script, and it's pretty good. There's also a comic series based on it. I only have, I think it was 5 issues. I have 3 of them. I'm missing 2, which kind of sucks. It's very similar. It has a few different tweaks from what's in the novel, but it's still the similar thing. It's a much better story overall. Hicks is the main character. In that, Ripley's alive, but she's in a coma. So Hicks gets to be the main character, and it's pretty good. It also adds a whole kind of Cold War thing to it, which does kind of date it, right? Even though it's not supposed to be Cold War, but they have this whole federation of guys that's basically space Soviets in it, but they don't wind up being that important. But yeah, I don't know why they had problems with that. I'm not saying if they kept that, it would have been an amazing movie, but it certainly would have been better than what we wound up with.
Yeah.
But that was only the second or third script. They had moved on to way crazier stuff. There was.
But I mean, they shit the bed on the 3rd installment, We're up to 8 movies now, whatever the hell it is.
I know. I mean, I don't believe in most sequels. Let's be real. Let's go back to that whole group of movies from that era and how I believe it works. Alien and Aliens are good, and then I don't think there should be any more. Predator and Predator 2 are good, then there shouldn't be any more. RoboCop and RoboCop 2 are good, shouldn't be any more. The first 2 Terminators are good, shouldn't be any more, and yet they just keep making and keep making and keep making. And I get it.
I mean, I love the concept. I love the idea, so I hope it's good. It's those damn Predators. I mean,
that's why I
did like the last Predator with the Native American girl.
Yeah, it was pretty
good.
I
did like that one.
Prey.
All the other ones have sucked.
Yeah, Prey was pretty good. I mean, it showed that they could still do something good with it, which gives you hope. Yeah, Prey's pretty good. I should watch it again.
That's the exact direction they should be taking with this shit, instead of, I don't know,
bringing back characters 30 years later.
No, definitely do not do that. That's a problem with Alien and Terminator.
Well, I mean, Alien they finally let go, but it took them a long time. Because Covenant still had characters that were in Prometheus, I guess, but that doesn't really mean much.
Well, that's the whole. Oh, you don't want them to be combined? Well, now that it actually is in the same universe. You didn't like it. Here it is. That's exactly what Ridley.
That was Ridley Scott. Yeah, that was Ridley Scott.
It's like all the hate he got for Prometheus, which I like.
I like Prometheus too. It's flawed. It's a very flawed movie. I accept. I understand it has flaws. There are things about it that I don't like either, but I still like it. It's one of those. It's the same thing as my Halloween 6 thing. Both Halloween 6 and Prometheus are movies that on paper I should despise. Like they fuck with the story. They don't really have good characters, but I still find something to like about them anyways. And so those are. It's funny because there's lots of movies I like that other people don't like that I will defend. I'll be like, hey, I don't defend Prometheus either. Like if people can go on and on about how much they hate the movie, and I'll be like, yeah, I get that. Like I don't even defend Prometheus. I'm just like, but I somehow find something in it to like.
I mean, it's a lot better than Alien Covenant. I know that much.
Yeah.
I've seen Alien Covenant once in the theater, and I'm still mad about it.
I've seen it since then, but it doesn't get any better. Like, you kind of hope.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, all the characters are so dumb. You don't care about any of them. At least I certainly didn't. They're all forgettable morons.
And I defended Ridley Scott with Prometheus. I was like, it's not the same movie. It's different. It's a different universe, different world, whatever. And then he goes and fucks it all up. But,
yeah.
Oh, well. They didn't ask me what I thought about it, so.
Yeah, let me check something. Something with an R. I just want to get my title right. It's a...
Requiem? Resurrection.
Oh, they've already used... See, they've already used those R words. Romulus.
Oh.
It's Alien Romulus. There's a pretty vague trailer out for it. And I watched it, and like... It's one of those things. It's impossible. Like, I mean, I'm glad they don't give too much away, but I mean, it's impossible. I don't know how you could watch the thing and say it looks good or bad. It looks like an alien movie. You know, it's in space and it's scary, and there's definitely aliens involved, xenomorphs, even though they don't really overtly show them. Like, there's nothing else I can make from it. I can't even tell what the concept is.
Well, I'm on board so far.
Yep, it's in space and it's got aliens. So,
I mean, I'll keep an open mind. I'll watch it. You know, I'll watch it with an open mind, but I don't have a lot of faith at this point.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be August.
They wanted, who was the guy that did, the South African guy that does, you know, did Elysium and,
oh, I don't like him or his movies.
Blomkamp? Neil Blomkamp? Is that his name?
Yeah.
His name? He was
I understand why they'd want him to. I understand that impulse. I personally don't like him, but I understand why people would want that. They would think that that's transferable. I'm not going to be like, oh, he's all wrong for it. Maybe he did. I don't know. I personally don't like his movies, but that doesn't do it, Alien. Who knows?
I like his movies, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, who is the director of this? That's my next question.
Probably some music video director, even the music videos don't exist anymore.
Oh no, it's the director that did I mean, I don't like his movies. What is it? Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake.
Fede Alvarez? Is that it?
That's it. He's from Uruguay. He's the only person from Uruguay I've ever heard of in my life. You said name a second person from Uruguay. I couldn't get it. But since he exists, that's a person from Uruguay. But yeah, so I mean, I thought the Evil Dead remake was okay for what they were going for. The Girl in the Spider's Web was good for whatever that's worth. I don't like Don't Breathe and Don't Breathe 2. And now he's doing this. I don't know. I guess possible. I will probably go see it. Wow.
I have a special love for Alien Resurrection.
I don't know if you could have Alien Solo, the original.
Oh yeah,
low for Alien 1979.
I'd probably. I mean, as far as what I think is better,
I can't even
choose
Alien
than
Aliens.
Yeah.
So I can't even choose between them. I like them pretty much equally.
I mean, they're such different movies, though.
Yeah, and I've said this shtick too. Speaking of on paper, like I know Jay would be saying this 100 times, but like obviously I'm too young. Alien came out in 1979. I wasn't even born. But if I'd been around and I saw Alien, and I would have really liked it. And then as the 80s went on, like I don't know, there's no internet, right? But I guess if I read in a magazine or something, they were like, okay, they're finally going to do an Alien sequel. We're going to get James Cameron. He was the guy that did Terminator. He's going to direct it now, not Ridley Scott. And it's going to be less horror and more action oriented. I'd be like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And then like the movie itself is actually awesome. So you never know, right? I'd be like, what a terrible, terrible idea to do that. And yet they did a brilliant job of it. So,
I mean, it's my personal favorite, but I think Alien is probably the better movie. Just, I don't know. One's a horror movie, one's an action movie. So.
I mean, obviously it breaks more ground.
Yeah.
It's hard to. I mean, Alien introduces the whole world.
Yeah.
Then again, I think Terminator 2 is better than Terminator 1 because I think expanding the world is even better than introducing it. So that's not always the argument, right? I'm not always just going to go with original because it introduces concepts, because I do think a concept can be done even better in a sequel, even though, as we were saying, I'm pretty down on a lot of sequels. Like, my God. Just thinking about how they're making that Crow remake. It makes me want to cry.
Have you seen the trailer?
No, I won't even. That's one I won't even watch a trailer.
It looks terrible.
I won't do it, man. I just fucking won't. There were movies that were special to me that they just kept making into the ground, like Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park's one of my favorite movies of all time. They've destroyed it with all these terrible sequels over all these years. I mean, The Crow had some crappy sequels, but at least they were like low key. But now this is a big remake. Like I don't want. Like I can't. No, I love The Crow. I love it so much. It just hurts me. Just leave it alone, man.
I don't know. I guess there's enough name recognition there that people know who The Crow is or know of The Crow, but they keep making these movies and the fucking audience like has no idea what they haven't been a lot. They were
could possibly
20 years old last time.
I could possibly accept this movie if it was different characters, but it's not. It's Eric Draven and like if it was, because they made sequel comics and the whole point was different characters.
Different.
And now they weren't great or anything, but at least it didn't offend me the way this does. But no, they're like, oh, this guy's going to be Eric Draven, and like I don't need to see that.
Yeah, I watched.
I don't know. The Crow's a very personal movie for me. Like it's a very personal movie for me. I don't even. I wouldn't even talk about it on this show.
And then I watched 3 for the first time for Cable Channel 11's show.
See, they did it. I think I told you that's why I wouldn't do it. The Crow is. I didn't want to hear what you guys had to say about it. I don't care if all of you guys did was say how The Crow was amazing. The other movies are shit. I still don't care. Plus, I don't trust that crew. They have some wild opinions, man. I don't want to know.
Well,
what
you wouldn't have liked the show then.
I would not want to know what they said about The Crow. Like, there was no way I was going to open myself up to that. Those guys, Jess, I don't know. Those guys have some weird views on things. Not saying I wouldn't do the show again, but I can't do it with The Crow. The Crow is too personal, man. Too personal.
You've got a lot of Edward Furlong Crow fans out there.
Oh, that's awful.
And that was when Edward Furlong was fat, too.
That shouldn't even exist. Like, can you believe you even said those words and that it's true? Like, that sounds made up. That doesn't sound like something that actually happened. That actually happened. That's real. Like, in 2024, that blows my mind. Back then, it blew my mind. There's no point where that sentence doesn't blow my mind. Doesn't matter what Edward Furlong has become or what he's done since. Even go back to the moment that he did it. It's crazy.
All right. Eddie needs 20 Percocets stat.
I mean, I don't want to pick on him for being a bad actor. I mean, he is a bad actor, but I mean, there's lots of bad actors who have done worse than him. But how did he even wind up in that place?
It's a pretty forgotten movie. Is it?
I mean,
I haven't seen it. I didn't watch it.
I can't remember which is which. One of them has Iggy Pop in it. I remember that much.
3, I think, or maybe 2.
I've seen both
2
2 and 3, but they mix together in my mind. It's just one terrible entity. I know they have differences, and I don't care.
I think 2's
But, yeah.
horrible. I like 3 more than 2.
Possible, yeah. But Crow is like seriously like top 20 movie for me all time, and kind of more personal too. Because like for instance, we've done like I don't know. It is weird how I guess it depends upon my frame of mind. Because I'm thinking like, while like one of my favorite movies that we did on here, even higher than The Crow, is we did Life Aquatic a few years ago. Like I love Life Aquatic, but I don't have that like burning passion, like personal attachment to it. I love the movie, I do. But I could listen to people talk about it. Like I can't listen to people talk about The Crow. I just wouldn't do that. Even if they're going to say good things, I wouldn't do that. It's kind of crazy that we did Amelie. I guess it's just because you loved it as much as I did. I think that's the only reason I could do it. Like I needed you to match me for that, and you did. You love it too, so it worked out. Because a lot of the things I love, like it's not like I need other people to love them. I don't expect them to. But I just don't need to express. I don't know. Like I can accept that people don't love things that I love. I don't love things other people love. I can obviously accept that. I just mean if I'm going to talk about it, though, yeah, I don't know. Like right now, I'm having the time of my life playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I am doing this alongside millions of people, but like I am in no way participating in anything like on Twitter or something. Like, you know, people sharing their opinions or their, yeah, like I don't want to know. I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, I'm the only person in the world playing that game right now because I do not care. Even if they like it, even if they only have good things to say, I don't want to hear about it. It's just me in the game. Like this is so good that it might be my favorite game of all time now. Like you have to combine. It's weird because you have to combine it because it's only part 2 of a 3-part thing. It's so massive. So I think if I combine it with 1 and a 3 that hasn't even out yet, then yeah, I guess it is the best game of all time. And the 3rd part hasn't even come out yet. But like I'll tell you, there was a part so the first part came out back in 2020. It was during COVID, so I totally needed it. It was perfect. Like going out on a mission to get that game I remember that was a big deal. April 2020, everything's so locked down. But I managed to get that game and the deluxe copy. And then I just remember coming home and playing it and loving it, of course, and stuff. And I remember this won't mean anything to people who don't know the game or the original game, but there's so much added. Of course, you know, it's a remake of the original from '97. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's not in the original. One little detail, just a small thing they added, was the idea of Shinra, the company, having a corporate mascot. That's not in the original game. But in this, they made up a dog with what am I trying to say? Like an army helmet. It's like a dog with an army helmet called Stamp. They made him up as like a corporate mascot for Shinra, right? Just it's not important to the plot. It's just some little thing they added. So I'm playing that game, and I think they mentioned Stamp. And the biggest plot point Stamp has is there's a part very early in the game where you're with Cloud and Tifa going through the tunnels, trying to make your way. You jumped off the train. You're trying to covertly make your way to get to this other reactor. You're on a reactor bombing mission, and it's a maze of tunnels. But you're told that other members of Avalanche have marked the way for you by doing like graffiti stamps, right? So that we're talking about Stamp. Another part of that game that's actually not in the second one that I'm playing now is like you can collect musical tracks. And what you would do is if you showed up in a place, if you heard the music change, you might be able to find it like a CD, and then you could play them on jukeboxes. Sometimes you just found them on jukeboxes. So I'm in the tunnels doing this, looking at the pictures of Stamp, and there's a part where I go into one of the side rooms. You don't even have to go in, but it's a side room. You know, you're looking for chests and things like that. And there's one of those jukebox things next to one of those like vending machines where you can buy stuff. And the jukebox is playing a new track that I haven't heard before. And I stop and listen to it. And they made an entire song about Stamp. And the song is presumably in world, some sort of like recording artist who's part of the Shinra propaganda machine. And they have to sing a song made up about Stamp. So it's about Stamp, but it's also about how great Shinra is, right? It's this little pop song about Stamp. And I don't know what other people thought, and I don't care. But the song was so good. It was so good that I stopped and just listened to it about 4 times in a row, and I cried. That's how much Final Fantasy VII means to me. And that's how happy it made me, how good and how seriously they were taking this whole remake thing. That this pop song that's not important to the plot or anything, you could miss it. You could go by and miss it. I love the song so much that I cried. So I'm just trying to give people an understanding of how much I care about something like Final Fantasy VII. There's almost nothing above it. So I'm very happy with Rebirth. It's huge. It's the biggest game I've ever played. I'm 70 hours in. It's not like I'm doing everything. I'm doing as much as I can, but there's literally optional stuff that I've left on the table, and I'm still not through. And I played for 70 hours. It is huge.
That's part 7,
right? So Final Fantasy VII, the remake thing, it's being released in 3 separate games. The first one came out in 2020. This is the second part called Rebirth. I'm not even sure how far it goes, but it covers quite a lot of the story. So it's the biggest game I've ever played. It's massive. The world is massive.
I've never played any Final Fantasy. That's why I never talk about it when you bring it up, because I know nothing. Would that be a good place to start? I mean,
7?
Would it be an okay place to start?
You mean like the remake, or because I mean it's a completely different game.
Yeah.
Like Final Fantasy VII, the original Final Fantasy VII from like '97 was a turn-based RPG, like they all were. Menu buttons. The Final Fantasy VII of today is much more action-oriented. Like you actually move your character around and swing your sword and stuff. You're not just picking stuff from a menu. It's much more action-oriented. So I mean, there's no wrong place to start because none of the Final Fantasies are related. Mm-hmm. Every Final Fantasy is different. There's been spin-offs that are related to ones, but I just mean the core titles. What's funny is I'm as old school as they come, because once we got to 10, I was done, and now we're up to like 16 or something. I haven't played Final Fantasy 11 or 13 or 14 or 15 or 16. I don't really care, but the first like 9 games, which run from the NES to the PlayStation 2 or the PlayStation 1, like are among the greatest games I've ever played. 6 has always been my favorite. 7 just behind it. Now I think if you combine the 3 remake 7s, it might be my favorite game of all time, but incredibly different, as you might imagine. A game in 2020 is much different than a game in 1997. So, 1997 was PlayStation kind of super deformed characters. Now we've got realistic, smooth looking characters. If you go back before 7, all the games 1 to 6 were sprites, that sprite art, and I love that stuff. I dig that so much. I don't even want to remake a 6. 6 is fine the way it is, but there's no wrong place to start. But I just mean you've never been like an RPG person, so the remake is probably better for you because it's more of an actiony thing. I understand, like everybody has their entry points, everybody has their age, but I just mean if you're a certain age and you never played like that kind of RPG, like it's hard to imagine you liking it now. It's hard to imagine an old school turn-based RPG holding most people's attention. They would find it repetitive and boring. And I mean, you have to fight and fight and fight just to get anywhere in those games. And encounters are random in the old Final Fantasies. Like you're walking around the map, or you're walking around a dungeon, you just get attacked. You don't see it. You don't see your enemies. They just attack you. This, of course, the enemies aren't random. You see them. Sometimes you can even avoid them if you want to. Obviously, there are certain fights you can't avoid. So it's a completely different thing. But it's still the world, the characters, and the story. And man, I was worried. I didn't know, they add stuff. They change some stuff, but it's all been a home run for me. I love it all. I'm really happy to see it. So, and I don't even mind waiting another 3 or 4 years for the third part because I love how long it's taking. I love the journey. It's a great journey. But I don't know. I'm always glad about my age. There's no wrong time to like watch a movie for the first time. There's no wrong time to play a game for the first time. But I am happy I'm the age I am, and I got to, especially more so with games than movies, and play the games when I played them. I don't know if anything will ever top being like 14 and playing Final Fantasy VII, to tell you the truth, except maybe being 40 and playing Rebirth now. But yeah. Just like, because as I said, like I don't need to share this with people. Like for instance, today I fought a character. It's an optional fight. But I got into a fight, and there was music, and it was music that you would only know if you played Final Fantasy V. It's from a certain boss character in Final Fantasy V, which wasn't even a one that came over here until much later. That was one of the ones that skipped. When it was on Super Nintendo, it didn't come over here. It wasn't until years later they started re-releasing some of the other ones like 5. So I can just imagine at some point, Twitter blew up, people mentioning that and talking about, but like, I don't need to engage in that. I don't care. It's just for me. But it is a cool moment. But yeah, I really like that era of games of like mid '90s to very early 2000s. To me, that's the best era, and maybe that is all nostalgia. Maybe just because of where I was in my life. Maybe it didn't have anything to do with the quality of games. Maybe it just had to do with being young, having things in front of me. I don't know. Although I've said this many times, there really ever will be a jump like the 16-bit jump to 32. Like, we're at a point now where the PlayStation 5 looks better than the PlayStation 4, but how much better? Like, is it that massive a leap? No, I don't think
You
so.
playing that on?
Imagine
You playing that on 5, the newest one?
This is this is on PS5.
Let me try to check out Rebirth. You said it is the first one of the remaster.
The first one's just called. Well, the second one's Rebirth. So the first one's just called Final Fantasy VII, or sometimes Remake. The second one they had to give a name, so it's Rebirth.
Okay.
But yeah.
I'll check it out. So I've played JRPGs before, but never those. I don't know how I managed to never play one of those.
Well, they're the most famous JRPGs for sure. They're definitely the most famous. But obviously these new modern ones don't have much in gameplay wise and stuff like that. But I mean, I do love them. I am loving them. The voice acting's great. Like, they really went out of their way and found great people for this. I remember watching like videos of like Aerith before it came out, and I was like, wow, this girl's amazing. There's actually a great thing I did see on YouTube. I don't look too much for it because, like I said, I ignore most of it. There is a good video of the voice actress for Aerith playing a section where Cloud and Aerith meet in the church, and she's actually crying, which I thought was something because she was younger than me. She didn't play the game back then, but she understood like what a beautiful moment it was, and I thought, wow, you really got the right person for this. Yeah. Anyway, we can wrap up. We can talk about video games and another thing. We're going to talk about Simpsons too. That's another thing that's coming up. We're going to do some Simpsons stuff on this channel. I know that's kind of breaking our rules because we only have done one thing on this channel, but we're just going to do a little side thing for a Simpsons thing because that's when our mind. So that's coming up soon too, maybe really soon. But anyway, we'll circle back to Cure, the movie, 1997, Kiyoshi Kurosawa. So as I said, it was great to see this movie again. I hadn't seen it since way back when I first kind of saw that wave of Asian movies. It kind of got lost in the shuffle for me, probably. It probably did get overshadowed by some of those other ones. I remembered them better. But, I mean, it really holds up. It's a great movie. I understand why it's so influential and respected. You can see how it did influence somebody like Bong Joon-ho. I like comparing it to Seven, which I did early in the movie. I do think it has a lot of parallels with Seven. It's a lot of fun. The number one thing I'll say again is, well, two things. Like, I love the originality of the story. It's not really a serial killer movie. It's something else, which is cool. And I love, of course, the pervading sense of dread, which is only outdone by Pulse or Cairo or by the same director. Like, he's just a master of that. So I'm going to have to seek that movie out and see that soon. But it's a good movie to sink your teeth into. Jay and I had a lot of stuff to interpret, right? Like, there's definitely different ways to interpret the movie, even to figure out how some events happened. You're not entirely sure if it played out how you thought. It might actually be different. So that's always fun. That's some good storytelling. Takabe is not like an amazing character or anything. Like, he's not like a classic character, but he just fits, I guess, is sort of what it is. He's kind of a relentless cop, but you do see another side of him because he has that whole thing about worrying about taking care of his wife. He does, again, have some parallels with Mills in Seven, and that he's a little intense. He's a little taking the job personally, even though he knows he shouldn't be, and he falls into that trap kind of thing. But at the same time, his fall is a lot more inevitable than, say, Mills. You feel like Mills maybe could have made different choices and saved himself a little bit if he'd listened to Somerset. It's hard to understand. It's hard to argue that Takabe could have avoided his fate, because it's like, he's kind of just doing what most people in that situation would do, really. I don't think he's necessarily being unprofessional or a bad cop. And I know it seems like, oh yeah, he is. Like, he hunted this guy down and shot him and all this. I know, but once you take into account everything he's been through, it makes a lot of sense. Like, if you were through all that, would you really arrest him to either? I wouldn't arrest him. I don't think I'm a cold-blooded killer at all, and I'm always for the idea of, like, arresting people and giving them warnings. But I think in this crazy situation, like he understands this guy arresting him is not going to solve anything. Like he's too dangerous to keep him alive. Unfortunately, killing him still doesn't really solve anything. But yeah, so most of the time, even when you think Takabe's falling into a trap, I don't feel like the audience is watching it going, "No, you idiot!" Like I feel like his plight is pretty relatable and understandable. So that's a good thing, because sometimes you see, characters that you want to succeed, you see them make sort of obvious blunders or mistakes, and it kind of takes out some of your enjoyment of the movie, right? Because you're just like, if he was a better written character, he wouldn't have made that dumb move type thing. I feel like Takabe definitely wasn't dumb. Even the stuff that seems overtly dumb, when you really think about what was going on and the plot against him, it's like, again, how does he avoid falling into this trap exactly? The only way he could is if from the beginning he was like, okay, this guy has super hypnotist powers that I totally believe in 100%.
Right.
Most people aren't going to do that. So
yeah. Cool.
All right.
Sounds good. Great movie. Check it out. I look forward to watching more of Kurosawa's stuff, hopefully soon.
Yeah, me too. Might watch Sweet Home next if I can find it. Sweet Home might be on YouTube. I'm not sure. I'm gonna find out that. But Sweet Home's looks like a fun time. As far as the game goes, I think there is like an English translation that I might be able to get on emulator now that I have something to play it on. So I'm gonna look. So I think I have that now. I just didn't load it onto my device, because some things I've emulated, I'm just like, well, it's not really good for like a little handheld thing. This would be perfect, so I wouldn't mind that at all. So that'll be fun. I've heard it's extremely hard, like a lot of the Famicom games that didn't come over here. This one had other reasons for not coming over here, but difficulty was still one reason. There are a lot of, like, we remember Nintendo games as hard. Sometimes the original Japanese version was even harder.
Yeah.
Wow. Because, I mean, back in the day, it's not like they held our hand or anything. Those were some hard fucking games we played. That's why I didn't finish a lot of them. It was just beyond my ability. Even when I've revisited them as an adult, like, I've been playing. I remember a few months ago, I know we're going to wrap up. I just remember knocking my head against the wall because I could only get so far into Castlevania 3. I was like, how did we do this as kids?
Yeah.
Like,
without save states, without any kind of saves.
And for most of those games, I'm too old school and I refuse to use save state. There's been exceptions here and there, only because I just want to see what happens, because I want to do it myself. I don't want to watch a YouTube video of somebody else doing it. I want to experience myself. So I have broken that rule a few times, but it was more like I want to see what happens. It's not like I don't know. It's not like I'm going to go on and be like, oh, I beat the game, I'm so awesome. Like, I know I'm not. I know the game's kicking my ass, But Sweet Home's a really interesting thing that maybe we'll be able to talk about in more detail if we ever do a final dungeon or something and talk about survival horror and Resident Evil. Because for years, like a lot of people, I didn't know existed.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting game. Anyway, we'll wrap up there. Thanks a lot, guys. Keep an eye peeled for something Simpsons related on this channel. I don't know. We're just trying something different. We'll put it in its own playlist type thing. It won't mess with the regular episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that'll be something fun to do.
Yeah. And we'll hopefully see you back next week, same time, assuming things work out.
Yeah.
So
I hope so. Yeah. We are slightly ahead of, we're doing better than we were doing last year at this time, I think. So we'll try to keep that pace up because, every time we do a show like this, like we do this show, like I think, oh, the director, Kurosawa, more possibilities spring up for, future shows. We're not going to run out of stuff to do, that's for sure. So we just need to, I don't know, get our act together so we can get cover some things and actually get to what we want to get to. So look for that in the future too. So thanks a lot for everybody that tuned in tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you for the comments. Some names I didn't recognize, so that's pretty cool. We're steadily gaining subscribers, so that's fun.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. Keep the content coming. Have a good one.